So have you heard? Eddie Garrison. Let's go. Have you heard Hoosier Nation? Let's go. The big news today. I mean, you're coming in and you're like, it's Pacers, Knicks, it's game 4. What do I always say in these situations? I'm convinced that the winner tonight wins the series. I think it's going to be the Pacers. They had the banquet last night, which is always must-see TV. Alex Pillow walking away with $3.8 million, record purse. All that going on. Caitlin Clark injury to discuss, Aaron Nesmith injury to discuss, and yet lo and behold, to lead things off, some 50-plus years in the making, Eddie Garrison, if you could please, play the breaking news sounder. After a layoff since 1969, even though within pop culture, he mysteriously would appear when you least expect it. But after a layoff of that amount of time, Indiana University Athletics announcing today that he's back. He's back. Hoosier the Bison is the new mascot returning to Indiana University after being the mascot from 1965 to 1969. Of course, the bison. Eddie Garrison, I will ask you, do you know the difference between a bison and a buffalo?
I do not.
They are essentially the same animal, but African or Asian breeds known as buffalo, in North America known as bison. And, of course, the bison is a key part of the Indiana State logo. That little fella's chopping out a tree while a bison's jumping in the background. And bison, according to Indiana University, once walked for centuries through Bloomington, Indiana, along the Buffalo Trace, drinking bourbon the entire time. As a result, bison imagery has appeared on the IU campus for 200 years and is a distinguishing feature of the Indiana State Seal. Indiana is still maintaining some element of surprise, as the video that they released today does not give a close look at the mascot's new costume. But it looks like it's a fella that walks around in candy-striped pants and a big old bison head. Eddie, you fired up for your bison to be walking around?
You see, Jake, I wore the old IU logo shirt today without even realizing of that news.
There you go. There you go. The bison should wear a shirt that says, "Why not Indiana?" Because he's a bison back in the Buffalo Tree. Good afternoon to you on this Tuesday that feels like a Monday. My name is Jake Query. Eddie Garrison, the other voice that you hear here. It is Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I spent the better part of my night last night contemplating. I finally decided I'm going to purchase a new watch. And I was down to 2 of them. I went back and forth. Finally selected the one that I pulled the trigger on. I ordered it, and now I'm feeling like I should have gone with the first. Is that a problem, Eddie? I think...
I don't think so.
But what if it shows up, and then am I always going to be chasing that I didn't get the first? That's my concern.
Well, you show me the 2 pictures, and I think they're both equally as cool.
Okay. I'm worried about it, though. Maybe I should do a poll for it.
Why not just get both, Jake? I mean, you're rich enough to get both.
Yeah, okay. Does your mom still have, and we have plenty to get to, I realize it. We're going to talk plenty Pacers and Knicks coming up in the program today. Chris Denari going to join us at 12:30. Stephen Holder, 1 o'clock today. Scott Agnes at 2 o'clock. Aaron Nesmith's injury report will be a primary focus. With Caitlin Clark, we know where things are. She has the quad strain. This is essentially the first time she's had injury since high school. I think she went in college without missing a lot of games.
Correct. So essentially, Jake, remember I think it was the preseason, she sat out the preseason first game because I believe it was a quad injury. So it's something that has been lingering. I'm wondering if there was a re-aggravation of some sort, or it's just something that was lingering for on and on and on. They're like, you know what? Let's shut you down for a couple of weeks to get you healthy and get ready for hopefully a postseason push from the Fever.
Now, do we happen to have, from this morning, Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Pacers, was on with the morning show this morning, and did he address the Aaron Nesmith situation in terms of the ankle injury?
So he did, but he did not add anything to it.
Okay, let's hear what he had to say here.
All he said, Jake, was that
let's hear from Rick Carlisle on what he had to say regarding Aaron Nesmith this morning.
All he said, Jake, was that it's the same thing as you said yesterday in practice. He didn't, and that was all he didn't elaborate anymore on that.
Okay. For people that would like to hear Rick Carlisle say that, do we not have that audio available? Is that what that comes down to? Because I'm sure he was asked about it earlier today, and yes, he probably said it's a game-time decision, right? I'm assuming that's what he said. But here we go. This is Rick Carlisle from earlier today.
No update other than what I told you guys yesterday. And no, he's become a guy that is absolutely essential to us. He's cemented himself as a starter, and he does so many things. He does so many. People look at the defense and the full court defense he's playing on all the good players. He can obviously shoot the ball. His movement is great, but he's a great runner, and he's just an important guy for us on the floor. So, as I said yesterday, he's listed as questionable. He will likely be a game time decision. He was quite sore yesterday, so we'll just have to see.
The key parts there is when you talk about his defense and his movement. That, to me, tips the cap to the fact that it looks like, or tips the hand, I should say, to the fact that if he's not able to go, I know a lot of people would think Benedict Mathurin would be the guy because of the offensive aspect. But if you are factoring in, as you notice at Rick Carlisle when he answered the question, it was more than just he's not available. It was then moving into what areas it is without even being asked it that he finds Nesmith to be the most important. And when he's talking about the loss of it, and the first thing that comes to mind is his movement and his defense, that leads Ben Shepherd over Ben Mathurin. Now, Mathurin, quite frankly, Eddie, needs to get going in this series because he's been – J&V said it, and he's right. Ever since the Tech in Cleveland, Mathurin's been a challenge. You know what I mean? And so he just has not played to par. But if Nesmith is out, then I think Shepherd – and I said this yesterday, I think Jarris Walker is a guy that you would have to take into consideration to start getting some minutes because of his size. You notice that one thing you notice is that Tom Thibodeau has gone further down his bench. He's gone into his bench a little bit, more so than – now the Pacers are obviously very, very deep, okay? But Tom Thibodeau has worked his bench a little bit more, and I thought got advantage in Game 3 over Carlisle because deciding to start Robinson and Towns and then bring Hart in off the bench, that threw Indiana off a little bit. And the size was something that the Pacers, it neutralized Miles Turner to an extent. So how did the Pacers respond tonight? Nesmith and his availability is a big key there. But when you look at what they're looking for in replacing him, it was not outside shooting, which has been key for him, as much as his defense and then his movement within their offense, which I think Shepherd moves pretty well. Now, I mean, he obviously doesn't have the versatility of penetration that does Nesmith, but from the outside still offers that. I think tonight, and Eddie, you tell me if you disagree, I think tonight, the winner of tonight most likely wins the series. It's dangerous to go there this early because you're just passing halfway of the series, but I always go back to that being if you're up 3-1, it's really difficult for New York, right?
I think it's different too, Jake, if you're in the position that Indiana's in where you win the first 2 road games and then you lose 2 at home. Now you have to go back to Madison Square Garden and get another one, and then you have to defend home court in Game 6. It's not like you're in the Knicks position where if you lose tonight, you still have 2 home games where you have a chance, but if you even it up, you're sitting in the driver's seat. You've won 2 in a row. You've got 2 home games left. All you have to do is not lose one game.
Hey, Jake, who wears a watch in 2025?
Jake Query.
I think
JMV.
Anybody over 40. Not anybody, but a lot of people, right?
Apple Watch, is that not a watch?
I've never understood the Apple Watch. Don't give you've opened up a can of worms here, but what does the Apple Watch do that the iPhone does not?
Well, it's a watch first and foremost. Secondly, it tracks your health, like your steps, whatever, activity, that type of stuff.
Okay.
If you don't want to bust out your phone, you can reply on your wrist.
That's the big thing. I mean, bust out your phone like you look down at your wrist, your phone is in your pocket. It's like 4 inches lower.
Let's just say like you're at church, Jake, for example, and someone important texts you, and you don't want to be rude and bring your phone out and text somebody back. You can just reply on your wrist.
I got news for you. The people that are sitting there, if you're talking to somebody, because they're like, well, I don't want to have to bring up my phone in conversation that looks rude. When you're talking to somebody and all of a sudden you look down and they're staring at their watch and they're pushing buttons, it's the same etiquette. It's the same breach of etiquette.
Yeah.
It's the exact same, right?
Yeah.
And I get, okay, the health aspect, sure, but most places have an app, right? No need for a watch. Okay, I mean, there's, yeah, exactly. My phone tracks my steps. No need for an Apple Watch, yes. I think there is something about the intricacies of the movement of a watch that people find fascinating, myself included.
When you mentioned Tom Thibodeau going to his bench, did he do that out of necessity, or you do that because that was the game plan? Because
that's a good question.
Like, you go down 20, next thing you know, Landry Shamit's in the game. Like, he was not in the game prior to them being down 20.
Well, I do think that he pushed some buttons in terms of, Rick Carlisle absolutely got advantage games 1 and 2 just in terms of strategy. And I think that, in substitution patterns, yes, I think Thibodeau had to respond a little bit, but then in doing so, he did push good buttons. I mean, and I thought the Robinson Towns move of starting 2 bigs in there was an important move on the chessboard that the Pacers now will have to probably respond to.
How do they respond to that, Jake? Because if you look at it from their defensive side of things for Indiana, you've got Turner matching up with Robinson in the paint, and now you've bringing Pascal Siakam out, and either he closes out on Karl Anthony Towns and prevents him from scoring 3, or Towns is driving right by him like we saw time and time again that fourth quarter.
I think you used more of Toppin, and so you counter with, if you're going to go double-double on with bigs to take advantage of size, then we're going to go double-double on bigs to take advantage of speed. And I think you play Toppin more, and then you start running. The Pacers in Game 3 had far more advantage in fast break points than they did in the first half of that game than they did the second. And I think it is very important for the Pacers to determine the pace of the game tonight and to try to run New York down. Now, one of the things that I'm very interested in, and I mentioned this yesterday, and I know yesterday, by the way, and thank you to Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus Finch, for filling in yesterday for Eddie, and as well, thank you yesterday if you did not hear it, which I realized it was a holiday, and many people were enjoying that, understandably. Al Harrington joined us, and then so too Alex Pillow, the Indy 500 winner, Connor Daly, and Santino Ferrucci on the show yesterday. But one of the things that we talked about was the pace of the Pacers and the difference from the first half to the second. How once they slowed it down, it just that's when New York was able to claw their way back in. The other thing that I mentioned yesterday is, do we start to see Jarris Walker? Because I thought he gave them very good minutes down the stretch and even into the playoffs a little bit. But it seems if you need to get some size advantage in the backcourt as opposed to the front court, does Walker now, especially if Nesmith can't go, is Walker an option you go with as well? And do you almost go Shepard Walker as opposed to Matherin in that spot and in that scenario?
Yeah.
Now, another thing I noticed, and this is fascinating to me, okay? I want to know why this is. I want to know why it is that when you get deep into the playoffs, and it's always a storyline, no matter where you are. You could be in Indianapolis, you could be in Atlanta, you could be in Dallas, you could be in Salt Lake City, wherever. Whenever a team gets far into the playoffs, and then a handful of wealthy, or at least presumed to be wealthy, either wealthy or financially irresponsible, whichever way you want to look at it, but a handful of visiting team fans make their way onto the court or mid-court or in primo, primary, easily seen seats, okay? And sure, Spike Lee did it when he bought tickets from one of the local auto dealers years ago and was able to sit on the court, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, how did Spike Lee get in the arena? These guys, whether you're talking about people that are following the Heat, whether you're talking about people that are following the Knicks, the Celtics, they're all the same guys. It's and literally they travel in packs, okay? You got to look out for these people. They travel in pairs. And here's what they all look like, every one of them. It's always one guy who's about, 5'10", 6 foot, 40 to 60 pounds overweight, usually wearing the jersey of the most obnoxious opposing team player with a T-shirt underneath it, like a Patrick Ewing style, and then large Harry Carey glasses, or some guys that look like MC Search from third base every time, right? And then they're always accompanied with their toady. And the toady usually is a guy who is not quite young enough to be guy number one's kid, but like his running mate or whatever. And these guys always have like bad feathered hair and then either Vanilla Ice or Kid Rock glasses. And they don't wear a jersey. They wear like some sort of a retro like ABA, uniform jacket or something like that with logos all over it. These guys literally are like Bozo and Cookie. And I'm not just talking about New York. I mean, this happens when the Heat are here. This happens when Golden State is here. I don't know where these guys come from. I don't know if it's like a traveling circus act where they just act like visiting team fans. But then people get bent out of shape about it, which I understand, and they say, well, you can't sell your tickets to the opposing team. You are letting down your team, except for this. If you are a season ticket holder and you realize that if you put your tickets, just throw it up there and I think this happens. People are like, you know what? I'm just going to put tickets up on StubHub. We'll leave it up for 2 days at a ridiculous price. And if somebody buys them, okay, I'll use that to buy my season tickets next year. I'll skip one game and make $30,000. So, and see what happens. You have no idea when you do it on StubHub or Ticketmaster resale where the people are coming from. Mm-hmm. I saw the Colts and I understand it. I understand from the organizational standpoint and the fan standpoint why you want home fans buying the tickets. I totally get it. But the Colts, for example, just issued basically a statement saying, or encouraging or discouraging their fans, if you are a season ticket holder and we can track that the majority of your tickets are going onto resale, then we are going to analyze that as to whether or not to sell you season tickets in the future. I get it. I understand the frustration of it, but it is a capitalistic society, number one, and a free market society, and number two, when you are a sports organization whose website has officially linked with resale ticket markets and those companies, it's kind of hard to then dictate whether or not people sell their tickets, right? Listen, I hope the place tonight is 100% Pacer fans. I do. I don't want those people. I don't want those guys around, gals, whatever. I don't want people yelling, "Go New York, go New York, go." It's annoying. But it literally, it's literally like the two that I just described is literally every single franchise's visiting traveling teams. Now the Pacers, here's who we got. The Pacers have two people that go to away games, and it's the sign guy and then Naptown Seth with his mohawk, who is like the nicest dude ever, soaks in the atmosphere and the restaurants and the sights to be seen at visiting places, and makes friends all over the world. This guy could go climb Mount Kilimanjaro and he meets a Pacer fan up there, and now they're traveling games together. Nicest dude ever. Not obnoxious at all. Sits, eats his popcorn, watches games. Wears a scarf. There you go. That's the way to do it. But I'm curious to see tonight that people are already, I guess, apprehensive that tonight you're going to have an invasion of the New Yorkers. Now, from a fan standpoint, the fan standpoint now, you got to be loud at Gamebridge. You got to be up in arms. You got to be loud and for the entire time. I think, honestly, what happened, and I'm saying this a little bit facetiously, but Eddie, I will ask you what I asked Atticus yesterday. How many people fit in Gamebridge Fieldhouse when it's sold out?
I believe it's around 13,000, 14,000.
Oh, it's more than that. For a Pacer game? It's 18 to 22, isn't it? Something like that?
Maybe 17.
Let me see.
I think it's 17,000.
It's got to be more than that. For an NBA arena?
Well, you have to remember they lost some seats when they did the renovation.
True. Those were where were those seats?
So the attendance for sellout, by the way, game number 3, 17,274.
17. Okay. So if it's 17,000, how many of those had been to the Indy 500? What would you guess?
Ooh. A few thousand, maybe?
I would say, let's say 3,500, 20%, right?
Yeah.
It was a long day. It was a long day.
It was.
And I think that place was bonkers in the first part of the game. And then by the third quarter, and this is true in every arena, not just Gamebridge Fieldhouse. This is true in every arena. The 2025 in-person sports experience now, you have a restaurant or bars attached to each section, and people at halftime go in to get a bite to eat, to get a beer, to get a Coke, whatever it might be, and oftentimes because of the lines of that, using the restroom, socializing, then you're like, oh gosh, hey guys, the third quarter started, let's get back out there. So the first couple minutes of the third quarter, it's like 40% inside the venue itself because everybody's underneath the stands at concessions and whatever else. And for that reason, the third quarter got off, the Pacers kind of were sluggish, and I think the fans were sluggish because I think people hit the wall. Now, obviously, I don't think that the Pacers are reflecting the atmosphere of the fans per se, but in terms of like super loud, raucous, intimidating, energizing events and atmosphere, I think that went away a little bit in Game 3, and I really do think that's partially because for so many people, by like 8:30 at night, it was like, oh my gosh, even though you had the I will admit, I was kind of fried. Like by the third quarter, I was kind of zoned out.
What if, Jake, not even just factoring in the fans that were in attendance at the race, just the day itself, if you were at home listening on the radio, you're probably out hanging out with, friends, family, whatever, throwing back a couple cold ones.
Correct.
Have a good time. So, like, not even just the fans in attendance at the race, even just the fact of whatever your whole race day operation is, if you listen at home or watch on television it and sync it up,
Undoubtedly. I think people that don't go, the race is a major cultural event, right? By the way, how was your race experience?
It was good.
Were you chilly?
A little bit.
Did you take a Snuggie?
No.
Did you enjoy some of the Surfside?
I did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Surfside's good, isn't it?
It was very good, very light.
No
easy.
Carbs?
None.
Well, 2 carbs, but no carbonation. Easy to go, easy to drink, right?
Yeah.
2 grams of sugar, so guilt-free.
Yes, exactly.
Who are you rooting for in the race?
I didn't really have a driver I was rooting for. I had 3 that I was hoping would win.
Okay.
One of 3 that was. One
Was that
did.
because there was an invested interest?
There was.
Can I guess the 3 that you made an invested interest on?
Yes.
Does it have anything to do with your listenership of this program?
No.
So it wasn't somebody that I told you, like, this is who's going to win?
I had already had something on him prior to the whole
Alex Pillow had to have been one of them.
thing, so you've got 2 of them.
What do you mean, Pillow and then?
Newgarden.
Yeah, I was going to say Newgarden had to be one.
Yes.
Right? The third, I'm going to say, let me ask you this. Here's how we're going to do this, Eddie. The third driver that you put an interest in on the Indy 500, if this driver was an NBA team, give me the NBA team equivalent going into the playoffs of their likelihood of winning the race.
Oh, man.
Show's over at 3.
I know. I don't know how to comp this driver to a team. Like, he was good. Nobody was talking about going into the race.
Okay.
Indiana?
Has the driver won before?
Yes.
So it can't be the Pacers.
No. It can't be Cleveland.
Well, Cleveland's won before.
Denver?
Okay. I'll go with Denver, yeah. So Denver. So Pato. Oh, no, you said the driver has won the 500 before.
Yeah.
Scott Dixon.
No.
Alexander Rossi.
No.
You said there was not a lot of discussion about them going in.
Correct.
Takuma Sato.
Yep.
Sato got victimized by what, and I think in Sato's case, it was his fault because he overshot his pit stall, I think. But then when they brought him back, I think it stalled. But oftentimes, I always say, teams that are drivers in a one-off situation, they're nothing against the men and women that are working the pit stall, but they're not used to doing it every single weekend, and that eventually shows its hand in 90% of the cases. 90% of the time. Chris Denari, who was on the call with me, and I saw a little of Game 3 with him. Television voice of the Pacers next.
Erickson's right on the rear wing. Alex Palou, one turn left, but Erickson's not going to let him get away.
It is a 3-car length advantage for Alex Palou out of 4.
And we have caution on the race course. Caution on the race course. And he is going to take the checkered flag. Alex Palou with caution on the course takes the checkered flag. Alex Palou wins the 109th Indianapolis 500 here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
So unfortunately for Chris Denari, in his final corner of the final lap of his final call on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway radio network, his call is abbreviated because of a caution that had come out in turn number 2 for a crash involving Nolan Siegel. And as we re-listen to that, Eddie Garrison brought the point up, Chris. Was your call interrupted by the caution flag or the fact that the jackass in turn 3 held on to it too long?
Oh, you're funny, Jake. I love working with you. No question about that. We've had a lot of fun over the years. You just don't have a lot of time, and I want to make sure I get it to Mark James. So he can make the appropriate call. And it's funny because I dropped it, and right when I was going to go, I think, another sentence, but in the corner of my eye, I did see yellow, but I didn't want to make that call. I thought Mark would have a better look at it. But, it's, as you know, we just don't have that much time to say what you're going to say, and I didn't want to overdo it there, so I just felt like, hey, just get out and let Mark make the call.
I think in my mind, as I rethink it, and I'll give a lot of credit to Michael Young here, I think Michael dropped it to me a little earlier than usual, and I think I dropped them to you, and I'm not trying to say this to defend I think I dropped them to you at about the same spot that I had been dropping them to you.
Yeah.
But the caution came out literally at I think I saw it as well right as I was throwing to you, or I heard it in my ear, right? Like, caution, caution. So I knew as I'm throwing it to you, wait a minute, obviously in that moment we're both kind of like, what's going on? And Erickson, the irony being when Marcus Erickson won the race, the same thing happened. If you remember, Sage Karam hit the wall in 2 as I was handing it to you, and I think that nixed you out on that one, right? It was almost the identical finish.
Yeah, and that's why I just think it's better to be safe and simple than try to do something that, maybe you make a mistake or whatever. And that's when I just sort of veer. It's Mark's call. He's the voice of the 500, and they're going to know a little bit more. You and I have both talked. The one thing about being out in the turn, and I will say the IndyCar app was really good on my phone. Just trying to, look at laps and who's in the lead and all that kind of stuff. But a lot of times you and I, we're all out there in the dark, right?
Totally.
And especially, I've had the conversation. What was tough was DeFrancesco and Foster continuing to be out in front of the leaders. And you would have the call, and, I've always said that the key in this broadcast is listening. You listen to Nick and Michael. I particularly listened to Michael and you, but you had to retrain your brain every time I saw him coming out of 3 that, hey, remember, Chris, those 2 guys aren't leaders. They're just out in front of everybody. So, I've listened back to it. You guys do such a wonderful job. It's been a thrill for me to be a part of it over the years, and I think very, very much so. Job well done by everybody on race day.
Okay, so Chris, before we get to Pacers-Knicks, for those that did not listen at the end of the race or hear it yesterday, that was indeed your last Indianapolis 500. After 26 years on the IMS radio network, 24 of them in turn number 4. Some iconic calls, the 2 most notable. Can a teenager win at Indianapolis with Marco Andretti in 2006, and then in 2011, Hildebrand slow and he hits the wall. He hits the wall coming out of 4. Couple of key moments for certain. What led to and congratulations on it, because very, very, very seldomly do broadcasters get to determine their own final year of doing something, and you did do that. I assume just life as a grandpa now and spending time with your family, right?
Yeah, I think, when you look at my career, and it's been just a thrill to be out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It all started when I interned for Channel 6 back in 1983 And then in the late 90s, the late Julio Fernandez gave the opportunity to be a part of the network, and then they moved me to Turn 4. Memorial Day weekend is always taken up, and it's been great. And when you add in the Pacers right now, even though I don't do the games, I mean, it's terrific. But, my wife and I have always, talked about, when is the right time, and I just felt it's the right time. It doesn't mean I won't be out at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway here and there going to a race. Chris Pollock, our GM, said, hey, you'll always have a credential, and that's great. I'll probably bring my grandson out to watch practice and those types of things. But and then a lot of it, too, is in July when the Brickyard comes, as our grandsons tend to get older and they will start school, July probably becomes a pretty good month for us to get away and do some stuff with them. So we just sort of looked at the big picture. And from a time standpoint, it's funny. I was on Monday morning, and I think Kevin Boney goes, now, are you still going to do the Pacers? I go, oh, yeah, I don't plan on giving that up for a number of years. I hope to do that for as long as the Pacers will have me and as long as it feels good for me. But I just looked at the commitments that you have, and while some people would say, oh, it's only a few days in May and a few days in July, when you add all those up, it's just days that give us a little bit more flexibility to do some of the things that we want. And, that, as you said, it's always good to sort of go out the way you want to go out before somebody shows you the door. And so that's why we made the decision. And I say we, because everything I've done in my 40-plus year broadcast career has been with my wife. I mean, all the opportunities I've had, we've always sat down and said, how does it best benefit us as a family? And so everything I've done has been with her, and this was just something that we felt was the right time.
Okay, Chris, let's get the Pacers-Knicks in Game 4 tonight. To me, a really, really, really big one that goes without saying. I credit Tom Thibodeau for making the chess move of putting Mitchell Robinson in to go alongside Karl Anthony Towns, going double down low on the bigs. I thought it disrupted Indiana a little bit. What counter now does Rick Carlisle make?
Well, I think the counter is, just playing with more force in the second half. I thought the Pacers threw, into that until the final 2 minutes of the first half when they built that 20-point lead were very good defensively. They were very good offensively. They had 14 fast break points in the first half. And then for some reason, the Pacers slowed down. Now, I'll give a lot of credit to New York. They used some different lineups, some better defenders. DeLon Wright was out there. And the Pacers had just 2 fast break points. And so I think that's going to be something to watch. The pace, I mean, you did a pretty good job on Jalen Brunson. He was 6 of 18 from the field, but you did not do a good enough job on Karl Anthony Towns. He had 20 of his 24 in the fourth quarter. And, you sort of felt like that might happen, Jake, because in Game 2, Tom Thibodeau basically benched Towns in the fourth quarter. And Towns has a very good ego, and I think he wanted to show people that was the wrong decision. And unfortunately for the Pacers, we saw that in the fourth quarter. And he's a guy, similar to Miles Turner. He can get you from inside, but most importantly, he can shoot that standing three-point shot, and some of those were really big daggers for the Knicks on Sunday night.
Chris, do you think, we were talking about this earlier, and I want your thought on it, especially with, Aaron Nesmith, for those that are just joining us, is essentially a day-to-day game time decision. But if Aaron Nesmith doesn't go, I think Shepard probably is the guy that slides into that starting spot. That then theoretically would elevate Jarris Walker. Would we have seen, even if Nesmith goes, is it time to maybe start reworking Jarris Walker back into rotation as well?
Yeah, I think that's been the beauty about what we've seen Rick Carlisle do, making, some obvious changes in rotations that have helped. I thought in Game 2, Tony Bradley did a nice job. And so there's always something that a coach has up their sleeve. And a lot of times it's the coach that lost the previous game that makes those adjustments. Think back to the difference between Game 3 and Game 4 in the Cleveland series in how the Pacers made some changes to attack that zone defense. So I'm sure that Rick and his staff have been working on a number of things the last 24, 48 hours to make the adjustments that they feel can be successful tonight.
Chris Denari is our guest. He is, of course, the television voice of the Indiana Pacers on the, let me see if I can get this right, FanDuel Sports Network. Did I get that right?
You got it. You aced that, yeah.
Okay, well, that's first for everything. Chris, the other thing with this game, and I wanted you to opine on this, you're around this team more than anybody. It has been, I believe, still, since essentially St. Patrick's Day when they've lost back-to-back games. Am I right in that?
Yes. They lost 3 straight back in mid-March. They lost a pair of games in Atlanta and then a game at Chicago, and then Tyrese Halliburton scored the 4-point play to win in Indianapolis against the Bucks. So, yeah, you go back about 2 months, more than 2 months, since the Pacers have lost 2 straight.
And so what do you see or what jumps out at you about the maturity of the group that allows them to do that, just the mindset? And I know that you obviously, I don't know if you were in the locker room afterwards or around them at all because your broadcast duties are done for the year, but did you see any deviation from the way that they've handled that in the last 2 months versus now?
No, just what I've observed and, in press conferences and those types of things. No, I haven't seen any difference. And I think back, and you'd appreciate this, Jake, think back to the Reggie days. I had a conversation, I remember when Austin Crozier worked with us on TV and radio, and we asked him about those days and going to the NBA Finals and the early 2000s when the team was really, really good. And he said, look, our leadership just, after we would lose, that they would just in the locker room say, hey, we're not losing again. And if you look back at those teams, they very rarely lost 2 games in a row. So I think it is a mindset, it is a maturity, and I think it's been the growth that we've seen collectively of this group that they've just said, look, okay, we lost, but we're not going to lose again.
Chris, you didn't get enough steps in at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. As we're getting ready to go out to our turns, I said, hey, Chris, you want to ride? We got a golf cart. You want to ride out to 4? And you said, no, I'll walk. Okay. And then afterwards, they sent us a thing. Does anybody need a ride back? You said, I'll walk back to the media center. Okay. And I thought, well, Chris got all his steps in. And then the game arrived, and I realized that you walked the entire time through the field house, right?
Yeah, I did. I mean, a lot. I stood in the tunnel. You saw me as you came out. You went to the restroom or you went courtside club or whatever, and I probably should have stayed right where I was, Jake, because things were going really, really well when I was in there by the tunnel. So I have to figure out tonight where I'm going to sit or where I'm going to watch. I'm a very superstitious person.
Well, I know.
And so I don't know tonight. I don't know tonight. If there's an extra seat by you, maybe I'll come by, but I doubt that's going to happen tonight.
There have been for a couple of them.
Yeah. Well, I sat with you in the was it the Cleveland series.
Yeah.
It was game 4. After the Pacers had the 40-plus point lead, you invited me to sit next to you, and I sat there with you for basically the end of the third and the whole fourth
At that
quarter.
point, you were comfortable enough you didn't have to pace. Yes.
Exactly.
Right.
I felt pretty good sitting next to you.
That's right.
The Pacers were going to win that night.
All right. Well, Chris, we will see you tonight, and it'll be a big one. Certainly appreciate the time, and hopefully it all goes well, but we shall see tonight. Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Jake.
All right. Chris Denari joining us on the program. Stephen Holder, by the way, about 15 minutes from now. I want to get back into the one other big storyline at Gainbridge Fieldhouse. Has nothing to do with Pacers, nothing to do with Knicks, but we'll discuss next. The Knicks are back for their game with the Pacers tonight, but in that arena, it will be a couple of weeks before we say Caitlin Clark is back. Caitlin Clark yesterday, the announcement from the Fever that she will be out. And I thought it was interesting, Eddie, about this. Eddie Garrison, the pre- and post-game host of the Fever broadcast that you hear on this radio station, I thought it was interesting that they kind of made sure to clarify that Caitlin Clark's injury is one that she is out a minimum of 2 weeks. Not maximum, minimum of 2 weeks. Now, looking at their schedule, I believe that's what, 5 games?
I'd have to
lines?
double check. That sounds about right.
But one of the things I think that could be, if I had to say half glass full here about it, is this. Caitlin Clark clearly is as advertised. I don't think I'm breaking any news to anybody by saying that. But even with that, I don't know that she's really had time to stop and catch her breath. Yes, she just had an off season. But sometimes, if you look at when she first came into the WNBA, and she was the triple doubles that are happening now, that didn't happen overnight. Her assisted turnover ratio has improved dramatically. She had turnover, I'm going to use the term issues in the beginning, but hear me out. I think a lot of those were because players were adjusting to playing with her and she to they in terms of her passing, her vision. I think there were times where she was anticipating things that teammates were not, and so therefore it would lead to a turnover that it wasn't necessarily always entirely her fault. Not saying that to sit here and defend her to the end-all be-all, but there was an acclimation period for certain. But she went essentially straight from college right into the WNBA game. And it was baptism by fire, even though obviously she showed up as if she was wearing a fireproof suit and was not burnt by it. But if there's any silver lining or glass half full to her missing a couple of weeks here, it may be that as the game has really come together for her, and she obviously is what we expected she was going to be, it still doesn't mean that there can't be some benefit to just kind of watching for a couple weeks and stepping to the side and maybe seeing, because she is very clearly a cerebral basketball player, and I don't mean that to say that she's thinking about schematic moves the other team is going to make or that she's going to make but what I mean by that is I think she has a very clear understanding as to how the game unfolds before her. And so as she's looking at it now, maybe this even allows her to step back and say, oh, you know what? These areas that I thought indicate that a lane is going to be open, I can now see because I've stepped out of it a little bit from a further distance. Like that lane isn't open. That's not a passing lane. That's not a penetrating lane, whatever it may be. So there is an aspect to where this may be beneficial for her and to the franchise because her teammates also now, if there are players that, and I don't know that there are, Eddie, you would know better than I, if there are players whose games kind of need to get jump-started a little bit, maybe this allows that to happen because now the ball is in their hands as opposed to Caitlin Clark's, or moving around more fluidly because you're not getting, a shot-dominant player, and not in a bad way, on the floor. So long as this is a temporary thing and she blends back in, which if you look at her, the ability for her to transition from the college to the professional game in a pretty short period of time, then you would think that once she gets back out there, there's kind of an immediate blend in, and that's not an issue. So while it is frustrating and disappointing to fans for certain that would like to see her play, Eddie, it would seem to me that there may be something that long-term at the end of the year could benefit where you look back on if they're deep in the playoffs and you go, those 2 weeks in May were pretty important, or May and June.
I compare it, Jake, to almost like, I don't want to say your quarterback being out, Jake, but I think that's where I'm going to go just because of the fact that this offense, that Stephanie White has created, and the biggest reason why Stephanie White returned to Indiana was Caitlin Clark and Aaliyah Boston. And right now, they've been asking Caitlin Clark to play a little more off ball than she has in the past, especially her rookie year. And it's been a major adjustment for her, and it hasn't really clicked yet. And I just wonder how it's all going to flow when she does return, because it could be 4 games, it could be 5, it could be more, just depending on how long it takes to recover from the quad strain. Now, in the meantime, you're going to have Kelsey Mitchell and Cindy Coulson step up and take over as the primary point guard for this Fever team. And I don't know how it'll all look going forward, but there is that aspect to it. But there is the aspect that you just mentioned about this could be a good opportunity for her to learn and watch the game from the side. But in a year where there are so many high expectations for this team, centered around Caitlin Clark, centered around the additions of Natasha Howard, Sophie Cunningham, and DeWanna Bonner, you need to have as many reps as you can possibly have, and taking away reps this early in the year could only throw things off later in the year.
By the way, what did your mom do with the Elio Castroneves, the brand fine chocolates, peanut butter chocolate?
It is in a
peanut butter cup
cryo chamber right now.
Really?
Yeah.
She was very excited about me. For those that are just joining us on the program.
Where were you?
On Carb Day, Elio Castroneves joined us. We had a box of chocolate peanut butter cups from the brand up in Keystone. That place is the place where I serendipitously discovered them several years ago. I was Christmas shopping, and I was going into the bookstore across from the Fashion Mall. I always forget if it's Borders or Barnes & Noble. I think it's Barnes & Noble. But either way, this is terribly embarrassing. It was very cold outside. I was just going to run in and get a book and come back out. I locked my keys in my car, which is I don't even know how you do that, right? Because usually the car doesn't even lock. I think the fob must have been broken or something. But anyway, so it was super cold outside, and they were closed. The bookstore was closing. It was like 5 minutes before it closed. Well, right next door, I see this chocolate store that looked like the finest cafe I'd ever seen in my life, and I went in to ask if I could use the phone and then wait in there for AAA to show up because it was cold outside. And they served me, I mean, I asked for it, but a hot caramel drink that was literally the greatest hot beverage I've ever had in my life. And this chocolate store is absolutely, like, beautiful. Beautiful. Anyway, so since we were doing Carb Day, and Lori and Bill stopped by, and they were like, oh, here. And so they gave me a thing of peanut butter cups, and Elio grabbed one and was eating it and raved about it, and then left a half-eaten one, and your mom got to meet Elio and was so excited we gave her the peanut butter cup.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So, yeah. She was very excited to meet him, and I thought he was very nice to her, right?
I mean he's great with fans, isn't he?
She seems like a very nice gal, but that was a
she raised me, Jake. Come
What's
on
that?
now. Well, duh, she raised me. What do you expect?
Is she the one that combs your hair each morning? Because it's looking particularly flat and wavy this morning. It's kind of stuck to your head. Your hair looks like those little Fisher Price people where you had the little plastic thing of the hair that you would pop on, kind of like a Mr. Potato Head hair type thing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, it's got a nice little wave to it.
My head is probably just as big as Mr. Potato Head.
That is correct. Yes. Yours is basically Idaho. Okay. Stephen Holder going to join us other side. We will not only talk about the Pacers Knicks with him because he's covered some of the playoff stuff, but obviously there is still some Colts things. There are some Colt things to look at in what has been a challenging last couple of days. We'll do it next. Stephen Holder is on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. He is, of course, with ESPN.com. Rhinegeist Brewery, now the 16th largest craft beer brewery in the United States. Started in Cincinnati, now distributed locally by Zinc Distribution. Zinc Distributors, I guess, technically speaking. But you can find it at all the places where you buy your beverages, and you'll love it. The Cincy Light, by the way, is a really good one. Stephen joining us now. Stephen, I'm going to begin with this. I want to talk Pacers Knicks with you as well. But, we talked about Jim Irsay upon his passing, and will continue to do so for a long time in this town in terms of his impact on the city. And it is my understanding, you jump in and correct me if you understand this to be differently, it is my understanding that the Colts as an organization are still navigating through or figuring out things like arrangements, maybe a public thing. Those things have yet to be decided and or announced. But I'm curious, just from your standpoint and having your finger on the pulse of the franchise, just how the franchise in general, organizationally, emotionally, all of it now, as they've kind of sorted through this, where things stand, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think, first off, I think that is accurate, excuse me, what you portrayed about the arrangements and will there or will there not be some sort of public remembrance. All of that is still TBD. I expect to hear something in the next couple of days on that, and then we'll go from there. But I don't know any particulars yet, and they're not ready to make that announcement. So I will let them do that when they're ready. I guess it is an interesting situation because we haven't really talked to anyone from the organization really at all. We will have some players, and Coach Shane Steichen will be available tomorrow because they start their actual OTA practices. So we do have that coming up, and that will perhaps shed some light and at least give some time for remembrance and that kind of thing. But there's also the question of at what time and place will we be able to talk to the people who make decisions on this franchise moving forward, and that's not something that I am pushing them to do right now. But there will come a time when that becomes necessary, and those voices will need to be heard as well. So there is a lot to navigate, I think, going forward. Even though that wasn't really part of your question, I do think that's something to think about and talk about as well.
And I guess, Stephen, and maybe we should even ask this to fans, what is the grace period? And I don't mean this insensitively at all.
Yeah.
What maybe we just trust our instinct here in terms of what is the grace period before then we look at the business side of the transition, because I think,
yep.
You tell me, I do believe that it is going to raise some big questions and perhaps even broach into some awkward analysis. Am I off base with that?
Well, there are things that we don't know. And I think when you don't know, in the absence of information, you kind of leap to conclusions maybe, right? So I will say this. It is a much better situation than we have seen in some other places, right? We have seen ownership situations where there was the passing of an owner, and that created a situation where things really devolved. I don't think that's necessarily in the cards here. They had a pretty clear transition plan, and that's been understood for many, many years, right? So that's good. We know who owns the team. There's no dispute about that. I mean, think about it, right? When Jim Irsay took ownership of the team, that did not happen until after a very bitter legal battle with his father's, second wife, if I remember correctly. Right?
That's correct.
So,
that's correct.
Right. So I mean, you talk about a what show, right? That's what that was. This is not that. Thank God. So we have seen even more recent than that. We've seen situations in Denver where there was some some indecisiveness and indecision about who was going to do what and who had rights to what, and that ended up being a situation where the team was sold. The Seahawks with Paul Allen, the Microsoft billionaire. If I understand correctly, his sister, I believe, and another family member have ownership of the team and don't really want it and are trying to figure out how to sell. So like this is not that. So
well,
that is
I think
great.
Stephen, one of the things that complicates things, is this is just my general studies at work degree at work here, right? But we have now gotten into a point where, and this isn't the fault of no one, okay? But the reality is that in the last probably decade to decade and a half, the value of professional sports franchises, and notably in the National Football League, the value of these franchises means, regardless of the most well-founded intentions known to man or woman, it means two things. Number one, it means oftentimes that the federal inheritance tax is very daunting. And it also means, number two, that it extremely limits the number of people who can buy a franchise as an individual. Even 10 years ago, there were individuals that could buy an NFL franchise. Now it is almost entirely investment groups or, hedge fund groups, that kind of thing, that are coming from multi groups of people, oftentimes outside the market in which that team exists. I mean, outside of New York, Los Angeles, or maybe Chicago, there aren't a lot of cities that have more than 3 to 4 people that would even have the finances to purchase an NFL team. So it just becomes very gray and murky, correct?
That is correct. I mean, you can look at, I mentioned the Denver situation. That was an investor group. You look at Washington and that sale, which I think was over $6 billion. I mean, that was an investor group. So much so, in fact, Jim Irsay was heavily involved in that, funny enough, because he hated him some Dan Snyder, okay? Let me tell you. And so I remember having very lengthy conversations about Dan Snyder with Jim Irsay, and that man detested Dan Snyder, who was forced to sell the team. Anyway, to stay on topic, that was a situation where the fellow owners had to vote to increase the number of allowable investors to make that deal happen. You understand? So there's a limit, there's a cap on the number of investors you can have. They had to actually raise the limit for that sale to go through. So anyway, you're right. Now, with the estate taxes, and I'm getting out of my depth here, so I'll be careful. But I mean, I can barely handle my own taxes. Okay,
that's right.
But I'll be clear about this. Like there are ways to deal with it and to lessen the impact, and I have to hope and assume that they did some of that. What we don't know is, my understanding is that Jim Irsay at some point did transfer some ownership of the team to his daughters.
Correct.
I don't know how much. I don't know how long ago. And those are the questions we cannot answer. And so that will have an impact on what their current status is going forward, I guess.
Now, here's the thing. I noticed a year ago, Stephen, and I think you and I might have talked about this at the Combine. I noticed a year ago in the media guide that when you looked at the staff directory of the Colts, it listed all 3 daughters under ownership. And that was done without fanfare or press release, but I thought it was a very notable and subtle change of title, which had to have had some boardroom things going on, correct?
Well, so, yeah, I understand what you're saying. So I would say this. That was a little bit of optics, because I would say the big change, at least in their titles, the bigger change came, I think, about 13 years ago. They actually added vice chair, or I think something along those lines, to their title, which kind of suggested ownership. And I think they altered the title to like vice chair / owner, something like that. Don't quote me on this. Of course, I'm saying this live on the radio. I'm saying don't quote me. The point is, I don't specifically remember, but I do think, I am not sure that change necessarily was a sign of of a change in terms of their ownership stake. I don't know that for a fact, but there's no question. At some point in the past, there was a recognition that there was an ownership stake from the Irsay daughters, and yes, that has been acknowledged in their title, I think, for some time in different ways.
Stephen Holder joining us from ESPN.com. He's on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Stephen, Pacers Knicks tonight, game number 4. Been saying it all day. I want you to tell me agree, disagree, or whatever. Winner tonight wins the series. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say yes to that. I would say this too: the Pacers are the better team. I'm not saying that because I'm on an Indianapolis radio show. I mean, I think the series has borne that out. They are the better team, and they lost Game 3 because they got out of character. They played like themselves in the first half, and in the second half, they were a completely different team. Now, give the Knicks credit. The Knicks had a lot to do with that. They turned up their defensive intensity. The Pacers just cowered. They did not handle it well. They also, I think, took better care of the ball, the Knicks, and that did not allow the Pacers to get some of those fast break points they were getting in the first half that allowed them to make that big run and go up by 20 points. You didn't see the Knicks do that in the second half. So they played cleaner. They played very good defense. And I thought the Pacers were more than happy to just let the Knicks dictate the pace and say, okay, if this is what we're going to do, then I guess this is what we're going to do. And it's like, well, wait a minute. That's not how you've won. The Pacers have won by staying true to who they are and remaining that and building upon that. And they didn't do that at all. So, I mean, this is not exactly like groundbreaking analysis, but it's really what it, I think, boiled down to. They've got to stay within character. It's much more important for them. The Knicks, to their credit, I would say the Knicks have been able to play a faster pace, more comfortably than maybe I thought they might. But they're much more comfortable, I think, playing the half-court game and running their offense or even letting Jalen Brunson sort of dribble around and figure something out. So Pacers got to get back to being them.
Who do you think are the 5 most famous guys walking around named Nick? I'm taking out Saint Nick, right? I mean, that's not if I'm not saying he's not a real guy, but he lives in the North Pole, so we're just talking about people
Right.
So, okay. Eddie, first Nick that comes to mind for you. Who are you going with?
Oh, my God. Nick.
Nick Nolte? Is he up there?
Nick Nolte. Why did Nick Van Exel come to mind? He
Slick
is not
Nick
on
at
the
night,
list,
not bad. His mom used to live in Indy. Okay. Nick Van Exel. Nick Cannon. Isn't there a Nick Cannon?
There is a Nick Cannon. Yes, he's prolific.
He just had 3 kids in the time that we've been trying to think of his name, right?
Like
Nick
47
Saban.
kids.
Oh, Nick Saban. Excellent. Nick Saban.
Never heard of him.
Okay. The Miami guys.
Why
okay.
is this so hard?
Who else we got?
What about like Nicholas? Does that count?
Well, what? Are
Nicolas
you
Cage.
Well, like Nicolas Cage.
Oh, Nicolas Cage isn't bad. Nick Cage. Do people call him that? Okay.
But do we call him Nick Cage?
No.
I've kind of heard him like jokingly referred to, like when he's being a jackass somewhere and he's in the news. They're like, yeah, Nick Cage, whatever. Like it's almost like his alter ego of when he. I don't know if I told you guys this. One time I asked a cop in the French Quarter in New Orleans, just sitting there shooting the bull with a cop where I was waiting outside Fatburger for my food. And I said to the cop, I go, hey, just out of curiosity, what's the drunkest you've ever seen somebody on Bourbon Street? And the guy said, well, Nicolas Cage, the actor? I go, yeah. And he goes, that guy. I said, okay. Fair enough.
I got a couple
was a
others,
disaster.
by the way. One is a Super Bowl MVP, former Indianapolis Colt, Nick Foles.
Oh. Well,
okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about all-time Nick.
Of course, then you've got a whole nickname that goes with that we can't get into. I thought you were going to say Dominic Rhodes, which should have been the MVP of the Super Bowl for the Colts. Did you have another one there, Steven? Famous Knicks?
I really don't. I'm weirdly blank on this. I don't know why. I need to look at my Rolodex. I don't have a Rolodex, people. But I need to look at my phone and see if I have any Knicks in here.
Here we go. How many Knicks
I need more Knicks in my life.
How many Knicks do you have? Here's the Knicks in my phone. You ready?
Nick Swisher.
Nick Cottington, who works here. Nick Gardishire, Nick Gardner from Butler, Nick Harmon, good dude. Nick Harper, former Colt Nick Harper. You remember him, Steven?
Yeah.
Party man Nick.
I got a Nick in here. Nick Hardwick.
What's that?
Nick Hardwick.
Okay, that's a good one. That's
Nick
a good
Castellanos.
Nick Yeoman, I have. Party Man Nick that used to call in the show with Derek and I and would always do, hey, baby, what's up? Go beer spill, go Colts, go track. He was the best, the late Party Man Nick. Still on my phone. That's all I got. What about you?
Not famous per se, not famous, like, internationally or nationally famous, but I have Nick Westbrook in my phone. Of course, his name is now hyphenated. What is it? The former IU receiver. Yeah, something like that.
Okay,
yeah.
Speaking of that, which leads to this
no
other
idea
topic.
Why he's in my phone, by the way.
Well, the reason I brought up Knicks by name, okay? I was 52 years old and however many days old I was yesterday when I learned that Karl Anthony Towns is Karl Anthony with a surname of Towns. I thought it was Karl with a surname of Anthony Towns. Did you know that?
I did know that, but I had kind of forgotten it because the Karl Anthony's hyphenated, isn't it?
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
Yes. That is true.
Does that mean his parents couldn't decide on which name to go with?
It's very strange. I need the story behind that. I really do.
I mean, if
that's
it's
super strange.
Yeah, if it's middle name, I mean, do you think it's just that his name was Karl Anthony Towns and he liked it so much that they just decided to make it one name?
I mean, it's like Mary Jane, but that's a lot simpler.
Well,
Karl Anthony.
That can get complex.
I don't know, man.
Okay, so speaking of Karl Anthony Towns, what does Indiana do to counter what he was able to do in the fourth quarter? Because Obi Toppin, I think we'll see more of Obi Toppin at the 5 just because Obi Toppin forces them to play fast. And you give up a little bit defensively there, but you're hoping that what you give up defensively you make up for in pace. Your thoughts?
No, I like that. I mean, that lineup really worked beautifully. What was that, in game 1 or 2? I can't remember, when they closed with that lineup with Obi Toppin on the floor. I thought that worked beautifully. And look, I think it's the key to their success. So if it enables them to play faster, absolutely. And it will obviously stretch the floor a little bit. Look, Miles Turner can play on the perimeter, can hit the 3, but will he be able to defensively on the defensive end? Can he be able to be in the paint and then also get out and close out on shots and do those kinds of things? Whereas Obi Toppin can, with his speed and athletic ability, you can more easily do that. So I like the idea. The good thing is here that they got Rick Carlisle, and that man is brilliant. We need to give him his flowers. And he's going to figure it out, I think. I really, really do think he's going to figure it out.
Yeah, listen, I thought Thibodeau, first in the playoffs so far, Carlisle's been a maestro. And I thought Thibodeau did kind of make a chess move there by going with the Twin Towers essentially in the starting lineup. And now Indiana's got to come back with another one, right? I mean, it's that simple, right?
Well, I mean, I think you could frankly offset it by doing the opposite, and it's a battle of wits, and we'll see what wins, right? That's kind of what you were suggesting just now. So there's going to be a counter move. It has to be, and I'm interested to see what it is. And I would be very comfortable if it was Rick Carlisle trying to come up with a counter move on my behalf. I'm very comfortable with that. So if I'm the Pacers, so we'll see what it is.
Okay, lastly, Stephen, from a Colts standpoint, the next thing that you will be working on that we will see on ESPN.com would be what?
Well, I think we'll probably get some idea. Well, idea is the wrong word, but we'll get some flavor of this quarterback battle because we get to actually watch them practice starting tomorrow. Over the next, I think, 3 weeks, we will get glimpses of them in actual practice. Because remember, before this point, they have only been doing, very, sort of rudimentary things where they can't even go offense versus defense until this week. So this is the first week of actual real football stuff that they're going to do, and we'll get to see it tomorrow. So I think that will be our first insight into how this quarterback thing is shaping up, and then we'll see where it goes from there, and that'll set us for a training camp.
Stephen Holder, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line. You going to be there tonight?
I will not, but I'm this week I'm kind of hanging back this week, but I am setting up my ducks in a row to be there for the finals because I think it's going to happen.
So you think Pacers in the finals, and then that means that you would get a trip to Oklahoma, right?
They don't need me to do that, and I'm fine staying home, frankly. But
my point being, we've got a pretty good idea it's going to be the Oklahoma City Thunder, right?
I think yes, I agree with what you're saying. Yes.
Okay.
The matchup that everybody predicted, of course.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what I say, Steven? The beauty of it is if the Pacers play Oklahoma City, then we get to hear the entire country say that the Pacers are getting breaks based on a big market bias, right?
The words you never thought you'd hear uttered.
That's exactly right. All right, Steven, appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
See you soon.
Steven Holder joining us on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line. Did you think of any other Knicks, Eddie? Nick Saban was a good one. There's got to be like a really big one that we're missing, right?
So there's Nick Kroll. I don't know if you know him. He's a comedian.
Okay.
And then there's another Nick. I forget his last name, but I know he's in a lot of the Adam Sandler movies. He's a comedian as well.
Probably one of those like you know him as soon as you see him type things.
Yes. Nick Young.
Nick Young's a good one. Nick Young's not a bad one. Nick Van Exel was a good one. Nick at Night, man. He had some cool Nikes back in the day, and his mom lived on the east side of Indianapolis.
Oh, my. Nick Jonas.
That's a big one. I mean, we probably should be proud of the fact that did not immediately pop to mind, right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't we somewhat be relieved by that? Couple of other somebody
Nick
else.
Swartzen.
What's that?
Swartzen. That's the guy I was thinking of.
Yeah, he's the Adam Sandler comedian. Officer Craig knew that. He's been listening all day today, which is much appreciated. All right, we come back. We'll get a little bit more into the latest on who might be in or out tonight. Pacers, Knicks, Game 4. We'll get you caught up on that next. Game 4 tonight, Pacers Knicks. We'll get you caught up on the Aaron Nesmith situation in just a second. Before we do that, mentioned this yesterday, and we had a whole Eddie. We actually did some People's Court yesterday.
Did you miss me?
No.
Yes, you did.
Did not.
You did.
But just fine.
You can just never admit it, can you?
Show was fine. Yeah, see? Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus, just walked in here right now. Matter of fact, Atticus, come back in here if you could. This is Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus Finch, who was out in the hallway. Could clearly hear. Walk on in. Now, Nathaniel, if you recall, yesterday at one point in the show, I said to you, now, just out of curiosity, is it Fitch or Finch? And you said it is indeed Finch. And I said, well, that's when I brought up that I call you Nathaniel, don't call me Atticus Finch. That was sometime around, what, 2:30? Is that right?
Somewhere around there,
okay.
Yeah.
You know why it was that time?
What's that?
Because it was 2.5 hours into the show before I realized you're not Eddie. Because I didn't even miss the fact that he was there. I didn't even notice
you
you
don't
weren't
have
here.
to lie.
Right?
It's okay.
Nathaniel, we had a great time, did we not, Nathaniel?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's a party in here.
It was a party in here. We had all kinds of fun.
It's okay.
Food. You know, I mean, you knew that we had it
We
in
got
here.
food right now. Evan Sherrill just dropped by with a cluster truck.
Well, I know, and which leads us to, and at one point, and I don't know what you guys have going on over there, okay, but I needed to find the sheet for the people who had played the numbers game for the Indy 500, and you sent me a message and said it's to Atticus's left in the drawer with cough drops.
Yep.
And so I said, where's the drawer with cough drops? To which Atticus knew exactly what that was and then immediately acted like you guys have been bogarting these cough drops like they're Bitcoin. What's going on with that? Like, is there...
Well,
have you seen anything in this company? I mean, it's the coffee's gone after a day. If there's any food out there, it's gone after a day. We got to hide this kind of stuff. You need to see John's stash of coffee he's got in his office.
Well, now it's not a stash anymore because you told everyone about it.
Sorry, guys.
Well, I mean, like, what are the two of you just like chugging down lung darts all day? Or you work at a coal
absolutely.
mine? What's going on with
Here's
the
thing,
cough drops?
Jake. You think they're cough drops?
Uh-oh.
Okay, yeah, I did notice they had little "Have a nice day" stickers all over.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go in the cluster truck. The numbers game for the Indy 500. Yesterday we had to play a People's Court because the biggest mover of the race, I believe, at the end of the race was Kyle Kirkwood. But Kirkwood was then moved to the back of the field because of the Andretti failing tech inspection. So we did, Eddie, yesterday, a People's Court to determine should the biggest mover of the field go to Kirkwood, who then was moved to the back of the field after the fact, or to the one who then inherited that title.
You got to go with the official results, right?
And the official results tell us that it is Will Power. So therefore, Matthew, you have won the biggest mover award. That is the second place from Cluster Truck. This is a gift card. I'm looking at it right here from the folks at Cluster Truck.
Hey, Benjamin, right?
And by the way, it is. I'm checking. Wow, they got all kinds of stuff here. I'm checking here to make sure. Thank you for supporting Cluster Truck. Congrats on the biggest mover in Jake's numbers game. Notice I don't see your name on there. $100 indeed.
It's amazing, Jake. You know, when you were out at Carb Day, I caught up with my parents later Friday night. I think it was Friday. No, it might have been Saturday. It was Saturday. And it's funny. I was talking to my mom, I was talking to my dad and my sister, and I was like, hey, how was it? And they're like, good, whatever. I was like, so what were you guys doing when he called up Elliot? Or when he had Elliot on the show? You're like, oh, we're just standing there. And then, you know, there's these people standing there, and they go, that's Eddie Garrison's parents. Those are Eddie Garrison's parents. That's Eddie Garrison's family. I'm like, now, see, Jake, I am well-liked, and everybody knows it's Quarrying Company, although I'm right there with you. It's okay. My name's just not on the front.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. All right. Our first place winner.
And Evan Sherrill in the company break room said, that's on me, Eddie. Should have included your name, too. It's okay.
Well, Freudian slips are real slips.
It's okay. I don't need my name on anything to be vindicated or validated.
So Matthew is our biggest winner, okay? Tim gets Scott McLaughlin because he was the first out. Now, that's another one that we could get finicky here. Officially scored as 33rd is Callum Ilott. But I'm going to make the decision here, and I hope that the company's okay with this. When I say first out, I mean literally the first car that drops out of competition. that is not competing in any way, shape, or form.
That did not complete 200 laps.
Correct. And or a lap. Scott McLaughlin was the first out of the race. And therefore, even though he has not scored his 33rd, he technically was the first car to drop out of competition. So McLaughlin still, that goes to Tim. Okay, so Tim is good there.
Can you answer this question for me,
Yes,
by
sir.
the way? So, how do they start the race and start getting laps in, even though the green flag hadn't been dropped yet?
Because they were on at that point the pace lap, meaning that by ruling, by the time they come around from the pace lap, the race is to begin scoring. I personally believe it was two things, Eddie. I really do believe this. It's a great question. I don't believe that the race has ever been started under caution. There have been years where we have had incident at the beginning of the race. Tom Sneva had an incident once where I think he ran out of fuel and they went an extra couple laps to bring him in. They started under green in 86. 92, Roberto Guerrero crashed on the opening laps. They still started in the flying green. I think it was two things. I think Kyle Larson's situation may have had something to do with that they wanted to get laps in. But more so, I think it was weather. I think they were looking and saying, we don't know what the forecast is going to be here, and we want to get all 500 miles in, so we've got to start accumulating laps as soon as possible in case there is a weather situation later in the day. But it was very unusual and a little, to me, and I think for most people, even though it was cool once they did get going, you want to see the procession, it just was so fractured and disjointed based on that.
Yeah.
At any rate, the winner that had Alex Palou, and we will get the gift card to you, a $200 gift card from Cluster Truck, so you have a wide array of menus to deliver for lunch, whatever meal it is, right to you, and they don't even start making it until you place your order. And that is Kyle. Kyle, you have won the $200 gift card. You had Alex Palou. And then lastly, Connor Daly. That goes to, and you had the Connor Daly name, right? Aaron. Aaron has won. He gets a gift card because he drew Connor Daly. And Connor Daly, of course, had the Connor Daly burger from Cluster Truck.
I'm receiving a text, Jake. There's been a protest on the first out. Look who had it was on our random numbers. Look who had number 15 for Callum Ilott.
Callum Ilott belongs to, okay. Alec, who has won every single thing that we've ever done here. Unbelievable. Sorry, official ruling, Scott McLaughlin. Okay, Rick Carlisle, Aaron Neesmith is a game-time decision. We know that. Question is if Aaron Neesmith does not go, and Rick Carlisle had said that he thinks that, part of what makes Aaron Neesmith so important is not just his defensive prowess and his ability to guard in a number of different ways and bring a tenacity to it, but also his movement offensively, his ability to shoot the basketball. And Neesmith, if you recall, rolled his ankle, left the playing area, came back out of the locker room, and then eventually returned back into the game. And when he returned back into the game, I think there was a lot of, thing of relief. But if you've ever sprained an ankle, once you stop moving is when you got a real problem. And I think he probably yesterday was extremely sore. I'm assuming that his ankle probably really swelled up. Yes, you can tape it a certain way. Yes, you can inject it with certain things to get movement going, but he is still a game-time decision. And I think either way, it would be totally unfair to think he is 100%. There are two guys, that notably I think would fulfill that role. And they seem to be two guys that right now are kind of going in two different directions. And Rick Carlisle, the head coach of the Pacers, explained about both of those guys and their direction. He did it earlier this morning on the Fan Morning Show, and we'll let you hear what he had to say and who we're talking about next. 17 minutes before the hour of 2 o'clock in Indianapolis. For that matter, it's 17 minutes before the hour of 2 o'clock everywhere in the Eastern time zone.
I have so missed that one. It's been a while since you've dropped that one on us, Jake.
Well, I do what I can. I try to use my patented lines and
why not Indiana?
Why not, right? I was leaving the Speedway, and two guys came up to me wearing T-shirts. I said, "Why not Indiana?" I said, "Let's go." Yeah. Actually, the best part about it was the guy said, "Hey, can we get a picture with you? We're wearing these shirts." I said, "Okay." So we take a picture, and I said, "Hey, can you do me a favor and send me that picture?" And he goes, "Okay." And I said, "Here, let me give you my number." And he said, and this was the biggest compliment to me of all time. He goes, "Dude, 75% of the people at this race have your phone number." Okay, thanks.
Is that a good or a bad thing, though?
It's cool. No, it's cool. Okay, so
75% of the 600 million that were there?
That's right. That's exactly right. Half the crowd of the day 3 of the NFL draft on Sunday. So now that we know Aaron Nesmith is a game-time decision, if he is not able to go, who steps in? I think you would have thought if this were 3 months ago, either Benedict Mathurin or Jarris Walker. But Ben Shepherd, when you consider his movement, his shot is back a little bit. I mean, he's hit some big shots lately, and he is a very good defender. And I like Ben Shepherd because, like Nesmith, he doesn't really need things orchestrated to go through. I'm not saying those other two guys do, but Shepherd knows his role. Rick Carlisle on Ben Shepherd from this morning when he was on with the guys this morning.
He's always ready. You know, he's a great system player. He's not a big scorer, or he's not going to wow you with a lot of statistical stuff. The things that are essential for us to play well, he contributes to, and that is running, defense, where it's really important to stick to an exact game plan and do the difficult things. Full court defense, press ups, help, all that kind of stuff.
Now, one of the things that Carlisle also talked about that I found interesting was how the pace that the Pacers want to play typically doesn't lend itself towards being really good defensively. And marrying those two things, I think, is kind of what really has helped make the Pacers what and who they are. But the other player that could get minutes without Nesmith on the floor would be Ben Mathurin, who at this point it just seems like if there's one guy that is the most easily deviating away from what you want just based on his focus, it would be Ben Mathurin. Rick Carlisle's thoughts on Mathurin's struggles.
I wouldn't focus on numbers. This time of year is not the regular season. And I just mentioned, the thing with Shepherd is it's not a numbers thing. It's just situationally, he's always ready and helps enhance what we're trying to do at both ends. And with Ben, it's the same thing. He's just got to stay ready. If Aaron is unable to play tonight, Ben is very much in the mix. So I cringe a little when I hear people just talking about numbers, when it comes to players, when it comes to Ben Mathurin. It's this time of year is not about numbers. It's about the team, and it's about contributing anything you can to the team, and that's what everybody's focus should be.
Now, I'm curious about this. Play the beginning of that again.
I wouldn't focus on numbers. This time of year is not the regular season.
Keep going. Is he saying we shouldn't focus on numbers when talking about Mathurin, or Mathurin should not focus on numbers?
And I just mentioned, the thing with Shepherd is it's not a numbers thing. It's just situationally, he's always ready and helps enhance what we're trying to do at both ends. And with Ben, it's the same thing. He's just got to stay ready.
See, it sounds to me like, to an extent, that's Carlisle. I'm not trying to twist his words here, and I don't think that he's throwing Mathurin under the bus by any stretch, but I think what he's saying there is, look, Mathurin's got to be ready to go regardless, and I think there have been times where Mathurin has Mathurin is a flat-out competitor. That's a dude that, remember, that's the guy that, like, when he came in was like, look, I'm going to go right at LeBron or whatever it was. I mean, he wants to compete at all times. But there's a difference at times between being individually competitive and knowing what's going to help your team be competitive. And I think at times he gets very wrapped up, he being Mathurin, gets very wrapped up in what he is being challenged by a player on the floor versus the team. And so the Pacers offense, and I'm not, listen, I'm no Pete Newell here. I'm no Bob Knight. I'm no Hank Iba. I'm no Mike Krzyzewski. I'm no Phil Jackson. But their offense, to me, reminds me kind of a motion offense because it is based upon, if you watch it, it is a consistent pass, screen, movement, a consistent moving offense, like in motion, obviously, right? And the Mathurin is the one player that when that ball, when it's going through that circular motion, Mathurin is the one guy that when he gets the ball and he's looking, if there's not a scoring opportunity immediately on a square up, instead of continuing that motion of passing, moving, cutting, I'm not saying he doesn't do those things, but if he has been challenged on the previous possession or he's been challenged by somebody in his ear, then he is the most likely on that roster to be the guy that puts his head down and says, I'm going to the basket, I'm going to score. And there have been times they need that. There was one of the games, I think it was in Cleveland, was it not, where they needed that. He was the one guy that was saying, I'm going to put my nose to the grind here and I'm going to score. But I think he gets challenged. His competitiveness personally challenges him, and at times it can benefit them. It did in that situation, but it also at times can detract from what it is they're trying to do of keeping that circular motion and just boom, 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 and keeping New York running and guessing, and then getting a shot, scoring, and then back on defense, whatever else. He can kind of slow things down. Is that too critical to me, Eddie, to say that at times Mathurin's the guy that the gears kind of slow down and grind?
No, it's hard to put into words. The best way I can explain it is when the Pacers are out there and the ball's moving, sometimes the ball just gets stuck when Mathurin touches it, just because he's not as quick to get rid of it, not play hot potato. He's more so trying to size up his defender, figure out how he can score on a one-on-one, break him down, and try to get to the rim or draw some sort of contact, and it just kind of disturbs the flow and the rhythm that the Pacers are in offensively. And there's too many times on defense where he's just standing and watching the ball and gives up a backdoor cut, and it allows the guys to score. And every possession is critical in the playoffs, and you can't be doing that.
Yeah, that's every possession's critical is right. You know what I mean? And but again, I think tonight it's going to be a couple of things they got to do. Number one, they got to get out and run, okay? And they've got to keep doing that. They've got to continue running. I think you're going to see more Toppin. I think Tony Bradley's giving him good minutes.
Let me ask you this, Jake, and something that you can talk with Scott Agnes about possibly here in 10 minutes. Is the wear-down effect wearing down Indiana? Did we start to see that in the second half of Game 2? A lot of missed shots, 5 for 25 on 3, a lot of them short, even though they were open looks. Could all this talk about them wearing down opponents and wearing down the opposition start having an effect on them, starting wearing themselves down?
I also think that what it's done is it has forced Thibodeau to go into his bench a little bit. And here's what's interesting.
And the other thing, too, the reason that sparked my memory is my question in my mind was this: when they played the Halliburton mic'd up clip of him, he hits a three, comes back, gets the steal, and he goes and dunks. He makes a comment, this is in the second quarter, that he didn't know if he was going to be able to dunk it because he didn't have his legs.
Good catch. I mean, good point. The other thing I think that's happened is this, and I do think the Pacers' depth is really good. And to this point, it has been their calling card for certain, right? But let's go back to, do me a favor, Eddie, go to the Knicks schedule and pull up, let's say, Game 3 against Boston. Okay? Or who did New York open with?
Detroit.
Okay, go to Game 3 against Detroit. And when you do that, then tell me how many okay, do you have the box score for that game?
Yeah, I have it right in front of me.
Okay. Now, I'm going to give you a player. You tell me how many minutes they played. You ready?
Already.
DeLon Wright. Okay. Josh Hart.
41.
Okay. He played 34 the other night. Miles McBride.
Deuce played 9.
Okay. Double four.
Double 4?
44.
Well, they call Miles McBride Deuce McBride. Landry Shamet played 4 minutes.
Okay. He played 11. Mitchell Robinson.
16.
Played 29. Is it possible that Indiana, by their depth, is forcing New York and Thibodeau to now go into his bench to play guys that are actually fresher because this is the first time they've seen extended minutes throughout the postseason? And is it actually the depth of New York, even though it's not as many people? I'm not going to say that it's better than Indiana's at this point, but is the gap not as great as we thought because you are seeing freshness there that you didn't anticipate, and New York has gone to it? I will. That may well be the case. But if you're Indiana, you still stay where you are. I go back to. I think we're going to see Jarris Walker tonight. Not a lot. I mean, maybe 10 minutes, but I'll bet you Jarris Walker played. Now, I may be totally wrong.
Let's hope it's a good reason we see Jarris Walker tonight, Jake.
Well, I think he's got. What I'm saying is, I think he could work his way into rotation.
All I'm saying is that the yes sirs win by 30.
Of course, if they do that, then we're going to see Johnny Furphy.
Yeah, let's go.
You want to see Furphy and Johnson, right?
That's right. Well, I don't know. Well, that's a.
Okay.
You can go either way with wanting to see those two.
Yeah, okay.
Because that means it's either a blowout win or a blowout loss.
Correct. Scott Agnes is going to join us next. Now, Eddie, I'm genuinely curious. This song came out when I was 5, I believe. It's interesting because my family, we lived in Shelbyville until the summer before I started kindergarten. And in that summer, we moved to Indianapolis from Shelbyville. So I have, and because I'm the youngest of 3, I have just unbelievably clear memories of my childhood and things because my sisters were older and I'd listen to their music. And also when you make a family move at that age as a kid, it's a very clear divider in your mind. So I remember very clear that era. And I love that song. And I'm curious, when you hear Staying Alive, do you think of that as like kind of a cool, catchy song or like super cheesy?
I still view it as cool and catchy.
Okay. Because it is definitely catchy for sure, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Speaking of that, did you catch Scott Agnes's, do we have him on the line here?
Not yet. I know he was coming back from fever practice, so...
No,
we'll
Caitlin Clark for a couple of weeks. That is a strained quad to the left, a strained left quad, correct?
Yes, a left strained quad, yep.
I think I've got a strained kneecap. Is that possible to have a strained kneecap? It's just a bone, right?
You can't strain a bone, correct.
Something's going on with it's my right kneecap. Like I'm getting a lot of soreness right on it feels like I.
Did you bruise it? Did you bang it on something?
I mean that's what it feels like, but this has been persistent now for not persistent, but recurring, better word, for the last 6 weeks.
Really?
Mm-hmm. So do I have a tendonitis?
You should get that checked out.
And I mean,
don't WebMD it.
Huh?
Don't WebMD it.
Listen. I've got to take off next week because I'm getting the lower part of my leg amputated because I just read WebMD. Right? I read the beginning lyrics of Eminem's song where it talks about his hands are sweaty and he's got mom's spaghetti on his chest and determined that means that he's got 9 different ailments. What would it be I'm just going to go with strained patellar. I've got patellar tendonitis in my right knee. Does that sound official enough?
That is the thing. I had it once. Tore my ACL and meniscus back in high school, and I had patellar tendonitis after that.
Isn't meniscus, by the way, I always remember meniscus as being the excessive fluid at the top of a beaker.
Excuse me?
Mm-hmm. I believe that's correct. If you take a beaker, okay? I'm not talking about from the Muppets, okay? But if you take a beaker like from chemistry and you fill it with water and there's a slight like a rim of water at the top that seemingly is there almost like it's standing on top of the maximum. Isn't that known as the meniscus?
It's the cartilage on the outside and the inside of your knee to prevent the bones
I understand
from
that.
grinding up against each other.
But what, okay, a meniscus of water. A water meniscus is the curved surface that forms at the top of a column of water in a container, typically a glass tube or container. The curve is due to the interaction between the cohesive forces, water molecules attracting each other, and adhesive forces, water molecules attracting the container surface. Now, are you going to give me any sort of credit there whatsoever?
I have no idea what in the world you just said. All I heard was water, meniscus.
Basically, what we're getting at is it just confirmed that the water that sits, the excessive water that sits atop a meniscus or atop a beaker beyond where it should is known as the meniscus.
Okay.
I just remember that from chemistry class.
Wow.
I know that because, and here's the thing, I failed algebra as a freshman. So then as a sophomore, because math and science are, the same part of the brain, instead of taking chemistry like most normal kids, I took unified chem physics, which is a slowed down version. So with that, I didn't learn about the meniscus. I learned about the meniscus because they slowed it down as they informed us of it. But, I'm sure that's shocking to you to know that math and science were not really strong suits in
by the way, Jake,
brain.
Funny, I got a text. Someone says they only listen to the show for me. And it's not my mother or my father.
Okay. It's your buddy Alec, right? Your one friend?
No. Not him either.
No, hold on. Read the text in its entirety, please.
I only listen for you.
No, I want the whole text, please.
I only listen for you.
And this is now. Here's the. You don't know this person?
I know this person.
Yeah, of course, because they texted you. How well do you know this person?
Very well. You know this person too, actually.
I've met this person, or I know this person well.
You know this person. I don't know if you know him well.
Oh, it's a male.
Yes.
Does he work in the building?
No.
Okay. Well, and now he certainly won't. Would you like for him to call in and explain why he only listens to the show for you?
No, I don't know if he's listening now. He might have been in his car.
So he just randomly sent that to you.
Well, we were talking about how you see I was not missed, even though I was missed by you. You just don't want to publicly admit it. Earlier in the show.
Okay. So was the person listening yesterday?
I don't know. I didn't ask.
Well, you wouldn't have to, because you would be able to deduce the fact that they were not listening yesterday if they only listened for you and you were not here. Right?
That would be correct. But I don't know.
By the way, while we wait on Scott Agnes, I want to check two things here. First, let's check where we stand on our baseball bet.
Oh, okay.
At the beginning of the year, we took all the teams that were projected to have 85 or fewer wins. We each got to, myself, Eddie, and listener Craig, right?
Craig? No.
I've got his name here. But we each picked a pair of teams. Chad, sorry. Whichever person gets the highest win total of the two teams that they select wins the big bet. Eddie, you went with, if I'm not mistaken, the Toronto Blue Jays, right?
Yes.
And they're kind of back on the right side of things here. And then did you also have the Cincinnati Reds? Or no, you went with the Marlins,
Chad
right?
had the Reds. Yeah, I went back to the well with the Miami, Florida Marlins.
And they've struggled just a little bit. 26 wins for the Blue Jays, 21 for the Marlins, putting you at 47. Now, for a while there, it was fairly close, but I'm kind of coming back down to earth as well. I had the, we don't know where the Nomadic Athletics, right? At 23. And then I combined the Nomadic Athletics with the White Sox. The White Sox are at 17, so I am at 40. I am well off the pace now. Chad went with the Chad or Craig? Chad, Craig?
Chad.
He went with the Reds at 27, and then he paired that with, and this is where he's fallen off, the Rockies. The Rockies are historically bad.
They just won 2 games over the weekend, Jake, so they're doing well.
You have 47 total wins, 40 now for my pair, and then 36 for him. The other thing I wanted to check today, because we've not talked a lot about it, but it is of significance certainly to some people, and that is where things stand in the Stanley Cup playoffs.
Oh, yes.
Now, Eddie, I will, with this, I'm gonna give you like a prize pack here, okay? If you will. I will be very, very impressed with this.
Okay.
In the Western Conference, we're down to 2 teams, huh?
Edmonton Oilers and Dallas Stars.
Can you tell me where it stands?
It is, let's see, Edmonton won last night, so it's 2-1 Edmonton.
Look at the big brain on Eddie. All right. On the other side, of course, the Eastern Conference.
That'd be the Florida Panthers and the Carolina Hurricanes.
Okay.
And the Florida Brendan King Panthers are going for the sweep tonight.
That's incorrect.
They're up 3-0.
Incorrect. Would you like to buzz yourself there, Smarty Pants?
Nope.
Were you not paying attention last night?
No, I wasn't.
According
3-1.
to this, what's that?
I forgot 3-1.
Yeah, 3-1.
I forgot they played last night, yeah.
It has been, can you tell me the last year that a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup?
No.
I believe it was Edmonton, was it not? Like in the, I want to say 94 was the Canucks and Rangers, because I was at that Game 7. And it may have been the next year. But I think it was the Edmonton Oilers. But either way, it's remarkable.
Atticus texted me and said 93 Montreal.
93 Montreal, that's right. Darn it, I knew it was Montreal.
Yep.
93, that's unbelievable. People can say what they want, whatever. I'm kind of rooting for the Edmonton Oilers. They got a cool logo. They won a lot of their championships based on former Indianapolis racers going there, and I will admit, I think it would be cool for Canada to win the Stanley Cup. People can come after me, whatever, fine.
As long as we get another celebration video. from that Edmonton Oilers fan.
Oh yeah, that's a good call there, right? I mean, I don't know if you know this or not, right? But in that video, actually, what you're looking at is the Stanley Large Cups, right? I mean, it goes without saying. Joining us now on the Rhinegeist Brewery guest line, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so, you read his work at Fieldhouse Files, Scott Agnes, with the Pacers tonight taking on the New York Knicks at game number 4. Scott, your gut and what you are just observing and what you're hearing. Aaron Nesmith, in or out? No. Eddie, do you want to play the part of Scott? There we go. Sorry, Scott, we lost you for a second there. So Aaron Nesmith, in or out?
I'll say in. It's just a matter of how good he looks, but he's going to be out there.
But by the way, did you hear a hum going on there? Are you on a private jet? You sound like you're doing one of the old Colts videos. Did we lose him again there, Eddie?
No, I think we did actually lose him that time. He told me he was outside of Cambridge. So remind me in the Bicentennial Unity Plaza.
You can just say the Plaza. That's fine.
Oh, sorry, it's the Morris Bicentennial Unity Plaza. I think he's back now, though.
Okay, we're going to try this to see if third time's a charm. Scott, you're allowed to drop out one more time, and then you're gone, at no fault of yourself. Okay, Aaron Nesmith, in or out?
In. He is in.
Now, are you saying that's your gut, or you've heard that he's in?
I'm answering your question, which is my gut. And
Okay.
I think for sure, after getting good treatment, having it respond well, given we'll see how it, he'll check on it when the team gets together for their walkthrough here in about 2 hours. But all signs point to him playing tonight.
Okay. Sure. So based on that, if we're going to stay with the theme of injuries on where you are, meaning over at the field house, let's get also to the fact that you went to fever practice. We know now Caitlin Clark. I thought it was interesting when they said a minimum of 2 weeks. Are they anticipating that this could be more, or like maybe a nagging injury with Caitlin Clark, or is this erring on the side of caution and just taking it slow with the left quad strain, if you will?
Yeah, I think it's the latter, and it's more what teams are doing more often, Jake. I think we're seeing teams set the tone early on with injuries, because it also, if you don't put that minimum and you say 2 weeks, then what is the question? Hey, did she have a setback? What's wrong? Why isn't she playing yet? I think it's laying the foundation right now for at least 2 weeks, but they're going to err on the side of caution. They'll do another MRI test, I'm sure, here in a couple of weeks and go from there.
And without Caitlin Clark on the floor, and then we'll get back to Pacers, the Fever looked different how?
I think the way in which they play, it's so predicated on her. Much like the Pacers were built surrounding Tyrese Halliburton, this Fever team was built with Caitlin in mind, her passing, her pick and roll, the sharpshooting. And so I think the actions will have to change some of it, but more than that, the emphasis that they lean on. Now, we will see Sydney Colson, the veteran, brought in from the Las Vegas Aces over the offseason. She'll get the start to begin.
Okay, Scott, speaking of Tyrese Halliburton, here's the big news. Do we have the breaking news sounder by chance, Eddie? Not necessarily breaking news because we mentioned it yesterday, but Tyrese Halliburton's father will be back at the game tonight, but he will not be in the lower bowl, but rather in a bowl, correct? Rather in a suite, correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay. Scott, let's get to just the game itself. Indiana needs to make what adjustment, if any, based on what New York did?
I'm not sure they need to do too much, quite frankly. I think they got away from their style of play. They got away from the pace. I would have liked to see them target Karl Anthony Towns there in the third quarter when his fouls were beginning to pile up a ton, right? So I think that's there. But more than anything, get back to playing their style, imposing their will. I thought they overwhelmed the Knicks in the first half and got away from it.
And with that, I thought Rick Carlisle talked about this, Scott, and you tell me how they marry this, if you will. He wants them to keep their same defensive intensity, goes without saying, especially with Karl Anthony Towns, but that they got away from their pace. Can they get back to playing the same pace if, for example, they've got to put Obi Toppin in and still maintain the same defensive presence, for example, on Karl Anthony Towns?
I think so, and I think that's a different look that would be good to show him out there. We saw Miles spend time on Towns. We saw Tony Bradley. I wouldn't be surprised to see Siakam and Toppin both get a little stint as well. The thing from the Knicks perspective that I'm curious to see, Jake, is how much time do they roll with solo lineups with either Karl Anthony Towns or Brunson? Because we knew going into the series you would see some of that, but they were most effective in that second half of game one when Brunson was in foul trouble, went on a 16-1 run. And then I think it was last game in the fourth quarter with Brunson out, they were a better team from a statistical standpoint. And so how much more can they roll with that? And it was also notable given the fact that they sat Towns much of the fourth quarter while Brunson went off the game before that.
Scott Agnes is our guest, Fieldhouse Files, where you can read his work. Scott, since he got shoved to the floor in the Cleveland game, has Benedict Mathurin almost become more passive?
I think I think what it is they tried to contain him and bottle him up, and you kind of lost that superpower is kind of what I'm viewing. His competitiveness is what makes him special, and ever since that incident with DeAndre Hunter, and even going back to the first round with Gary Trent Jr., he's been a little bit contained, and therefore maybe it is a little bit passive or not himself. It almost feels like now he, in his short bursts that he's been out there, is he's trying to not get in the way rather than playing his style of play.
Yeah, that's the thing. I just, the ideal situation for Mathurin would be if you could channel his competitiveness into a defensive drive. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm, for sure.
Because which leads to the other question, which is if Indiana needs to bolster defensively, or if they are, maybe it's the Pacers now that are, starting to suck wind a little bit, if you will. If that is the case, does Jarris Walker then get into rotation? That's the guy that I keep wondering about when he's going to get back into rotation.
Yeah, that's the great question at this moment. I'm not sure they need to change the rotation based on everything we've seen in this series. I think it's just dependent on each of these guys playing harder and getting stops defensively. That's the other thing. When we talk so much about pace, it starts on the defensive end so they're not grabbing the ball out of the net and then can get it and run. And I thought that was the big difference. First half, I think it was 14-0. Second half, it was 2-2 in fast break points. You look at that level of what they're doing, and that's a big reason why the Knicks were led in the game. For Jarris, though, he would present some defensive challenges, but I also consider, what did we just talk about with Mathurin? This is all new to him, too, right? And so is the stage too big? This is his first playoff series. That is one big reason why I'm a little bit hesitant to mix things up when what you have been doing has already worked.
Scott Agnes, our guest, Ryan Geist Brewery guest line, where you can hear him right now. 16th largest, by the way, craft brewer in the United States, now available right here in central Indiana from Zinc Distributing. Scott, Tony Bradley, I thought, has given the Pacers good minutes, to be honest with you. Not necessarily box score minutes, but he's been in pretty good position defensively more often than not. He kind of keeps things alive at times. He knows his limitation, I guess, if you will, offensively. Do you believe that he is in rotation right now strictly out of necessity because of fouls and et cetera, or because he's earned it with the way that he has played and the contribution he's made?
He's earned it. That's what that is, in my opinion. I think he's outplayed Thomas Bryant in terms of, we talk about defending Towns, trying to make things difficult. But more than that, it's Mitchell Robinson in particular with his rebounding edge. Tony Bradley played the most minutes that he's played probably all season, but certainly this series, last game, I think about 15. Mitchell Robinson, who started the game, that was the big change we saw from the Knicks. I think he finished with 6 rebounds after going off for double digits. We can count on Mitchell Robinson to get double-digit rebounds. So to answer your question, I thought Tony Bradley did a phenomenal job defensively, challenging, making things difficult, and obviously doing way more than any of us expected when he was brought in on a 10-day contract back in March.
I asked this earlier, Scott, to Stephen Holder. I'll let you chime in. Most famous people named Nick.
Nick Lachey was the first name that came.
Oh, nice. We didn't get that one, did we?
That was the first name that I thought of.
Nick seems to be a big boy band name. You got Nick
For
Jonas,
sure.
right?
Yeah.
Nick Lachey. Saint Nick, goes without saying. Nick Saban is what you came up with, right? Nick Nolte. Now, do we count Nick Cage, or does it have to be Nicolas Cage, Scott?
I was going to say Jack Nicklaus.
That's not bad, Jack. Okay, that's not bad.
Jack Nicholson while we're at it.
Yeah, but then
We
you
can
start getting
deviate
into
a little
different
bit.
spelling variation, right? And that gets
fair.
tricky, right?
Yeah.
Scott, what do you got working in terms of Fieldhouse Files? Obviously, you're kind of double dipping here between the two.
Yeah, that's the big thing. But going to write about Neesmith. I heard that Denari was going to be on your show. I was going to mention him, how he just wrapped up his time on the IMS radio network, which I just found out, and I thought that was an incredibly touching move by him and to prioritize family. But then also coming up, we'll obviously have game coverage, and then what does this Fever team look like without Caitlin Clark for the foreseeable future?
Did you go to the race?
I did, absolutely.
Where do you sit for the race?
Media Center.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I'm inside, so I enjoy that.
Well. Did you enjoy some of the food spread while you were there in the media center?
I did. IMS, I will say, is one of the old school venues that still provides full buffets, still provides it for free. It is absolutely much appreciated.
You remember
by
when
us
they
in the
used to
media.
have the cafeteria down on the third floor, right?
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Old school.
So you watch in the media center. Now, when you're in the media center, I'm curious. So the media center, for those that are unfamiliar, at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is right along the main straightaway. It has on the fourth floor, I think there are over 400 credentialed media members. That does not necessarily mean that there are 400 there, but what is the reaction of media? Because it's a quiet working media room. I mean, usually it's like a mausoleum up there. What is like late in the race or the McLaughlin crash or whatever else? What is the overall like mood or tenor or volume?
Yeah, so I would say it was as full as it's been in the last 10 years since I've been there throughout. So that was really impressive. And it was busy throughout the week. I would say during the race, it's very much like a crowd that is anticipating things, meaning when there's McLaughlin goes out and there's a crash, it's the groans, the oohs, the ahs. Outside of that, there's not really cheering, anything like that by any means. But we all react like, oh my goodness, or changed camera shot, what happened, as we're all curious and watching in real time.
And does everybody move up to the window to watch the start?
Yes, that's the other cool thing. Good point. Is we all go to that window, I think, on the west side there, and a lot of people are watching it. A lot of people are taking videos of it. I made sure to do it when we had that military flyover.
Listen,
that was phenomenal.
The helicopters above the field was remarkable, right?
We saw that Friday, and I was like, is this supposed to be happening?
Right,
Like
I know.
They looked too close, but obviously that was their practice session.
It was all very, very cool. All right, Scott, game 4 tonight. I know you'll have all the coverage, Fieldhouse Files. Appreciate it.
All right, thanks.
One of the questions last night that people most often ask to me is, how much does the driver make? So Alex Pillow last night took home, I believe, his check. And at the banquet, they used to say, well, how about this? We got a check for you for, Calabria. We got a check here for $310,000. Hey, how about that? And people would always ask, like, wow, a guy goes out there like Alex Pillow won $3.8 million. Typically. Matter of fact, we'll do this. If I were to go in the typical fashion, okay, there is a variance as low as and as high as, if you will, okay? I'm going to let Eddie Garrison, Eddie, I want you to, and don't look anything up, okay?
Okay.
I want you to look right now if Alex Pillow was awarded, and let's see what the total, I'm going to give you the exact total that his check was, okay?
Okay.
So if he was awarded yesterday at the banquet, when they announce it, $3.8 million, okay?
All righty.
Out of the, I think it was 20.2 was the total purse, give or take. I could be wrong there. I want you to write down for me your estimate, low number and high number, based on the variance. How much did Alex Pillow actually win? And we're going to do this, on The Price is Right, they got that thing where the thing slides and you got to stop it. And if you, the green thing, and if you're within the window of the estimate, you win the grand prize.
Sure.
Okay. We're going to do it exactly that way.
I didn't know if we're going with like the mountain climbing.
Well,
game?
we'll use that music for sure, right? The mountain climber music is absolutely going to be played.
Now, can you refresh my memory? What is that?
Okay. oh lady, oh lady, oh lady, oh lady, oh lady, oh. Now, and that's my throat's a little scratchy after the race. I was fabulous on my back home again in Indiana. Was I not?
That was really good. Yeah. Played it at the end of the show again.
I mean, and by request, right? I mean, that literally, I mean, people were calling in for it. So we're going to do that thing where the little green plastic partition slides on the prices. And if you land it in between and you get it correct on the window, then you're going to win a fabulous prize. The low number, based typically on what I know, the low number and the high number of what I estimate Alex Pillow's actual take-home was. We'll do it next. Okay, here's how we do this. So Alex Palou, when you read the headlines, wins $3.8 million for winning the Indy 500. Question is, how much of that does Alex Palou see? It is probably the most common question that I receive. Okay? And there is a wide variety in terms of that answer. It depends on the driver, truth be told. I mean, if we're being honest. Now, I'm going with, in Palou's case, and this is a lot different than when, for example, he was a driver for Dale Coyne Racing. Nothing against Dale Coyne, but that is a smaller funded team, and Palou was a much more, I'll use obscure for lack of a better term, but he was a much less established driver. Palou's case now is where, he can command pretty good money. So there are drivers in the Indy 500 or in the IndyCar series, truthfully, that probably don't even have a set base salary, but they just get a percentage of winnings and et cetera. And then there are drivers that the Scott Dixons, the Alex Palous, the Alexander Rossi's, that they have a base set salary, and then they are given, there is something that goes into their winnings. It usually is a fluctuation, so I'm going on the low end of what a driver percentage would be and the high end of what a driver percentage would be, what that window is. So if $3.8 million was, and I will, once I throw it to Eddie, then we'll let Eddie decide, $3.8 million, Eddie's going to give us our guess as to what Palou would have won, and we're going to see if it's in that window on the typical low end or the typical high end. So with that, Eddie, you may go ahead and begin your contemplation and start thinking about it and doing it. Okay, he's doing his math, and we see that I don't know who that guy is. Let's go back to the Price is Right guy, please. That's more fun. There we go. Now I feel like I'm at the pizza place at Kings Island. Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. So there we go. Looks like Eddie's got his answer here. Eddie, do you have a guess for us?
Are you wanting
I'm wanting your guess. I'm wanting your guess, and I have a window that I believe it would be between, and we're going to see if you are between and within the window as a winner on The Price is Right.
I will say 2.2 million.
Your guess again is 2.2 million.
Yes.
Would you like to guess again?
If I knew which way I was, that'd be fantastic.
What about if I told you? What about if I told you? If you, with your guess, you just committed a pit road violation. You came in a little too quick. Came in a little hot.
1.8.
Bam! Just like that. That's all there is to it, Dustin. That's all there is to it. A winner. Just like that. We'll be right back on Our Price is Right. Don't go away.
By the way, Drew Carey's terrible at that. And I love Drew Carey, but Bob Barker, it's difficult because you're following a legend. More often than not, a driver has a base salary, and then depending on what that base is, there's no known on this, but it is typically that the driver gets anywhere between, as some of them may even be 25%, but typically 40 to 55%. So in that scenario, Alex Palou would have gotten somewhere between $1.52 million and just under $2.1 million. $2,090,000. Now, he would be on the higher end of that. So I think 2 is a fair number, that he got $2 million out of that. When Dan Weldon, for example, won the 500, his first one in 2005, it is my understanding, and it is Dan Weldon that told me this. I don't know why he would have made this up, right? The late, great Dan Weldon. Dan Weldon, when he won the 500 in 2005, the driver also gets the pace car. They are awarded the pace car. Juan Montoya often jokes about it because the pace car, the year that he won it was the Oldsmobile Alero. Like, can you imagine Juan Montoya just rolling around in an Oldsmobile that's got like a, Pep Boys IndyCar thing on the side or Northern Lights or whatever? And then later when he won it, I think it was a Corvette or, it was a souped-up car, and he's like, yeah, I got a family sedan and a sports car in my garage. But so the driver gets the pace car. Well, when Weldon won the 500 in 2005, he was awarded the pace car. And then when he left the team and joined Chip Ganassi Racing, he left Andretti, at that time Andretti Green, and went to Chip Ganassi Racing, and then was basically served an invoice to where he had to pay Andretti Green like 50% the value of the car because his contract said that he got 50% the winnings, and since the pace car was considered a winning and they gave it to him, then once he departed the team, they're like, hey, we actually own 50% of that pace car. So if you want the pace car outright, you got to give us 50% for it. And so he paid them to be able to keep the pace car. Now, if you won the Indy 500 pace car, so Eddie, if you won the Indy 500,
yeah. Did you have a problem with Alex Palou in his milk celebration?
Thought it was fabulous.
Thought it went against typical celebrations. No. We didn't see it dumping on himself,
which is great. Now, let me tell you where that began. Two things about Palou and what he did that I thought were fantastic. And the dumping thing, I get it. I mean, so what happened was this. True story. I've told it before, but it's so good I'm going to tell it again. And I have asked this for verification on both sides, and both sides that I asked were like, you know what? I think that's correct. They didn't say like, oh, no, definitely, but they're like, I think that is correct. Every year at the beginning of the month, the American Dairy Association of Indiana takes a survey of all drivers on what milk they want.
It was pretty much whole milk for the entire field this year.
A lot of them choose whole milk because it is the thickest and thus looks the best in photos. Whole, 2%, and skim are the options that are given. And so in 2000, now Elio Castroneves was very new to the Indianapolis 500. When the driver comes up, you have the American Dairy Association, the dairy farmers, they have a rookie farmer and a veteran farmer. The rookie is there to observe what's going on, and then the next year they become the veteran that distributes the milk. So there are two people up there. The rookie also holds the secondary bottles of milk that then go to like the crew chief, the team. The owner, they also do get a bottle. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Castroneves wins the race in 2001, gets out, gets the milk. In 2002, he wins for a second time in his second running. They get up into victory circle, and there is confusion as to which milk he preferred, whether it was 2%, skim, whatever it might be. And the rookie farmer and the veteran farmer that year, the presenters for the Dairy Association are like, oh my gosh, I can't remember. Does he want whole or 2% or skim? What's he want? And they said, well, almost everybody wants either whole or 2%. So just find out, just subtly find out which one he wants, and that's what we'll give him. Castroneves gets out of the car, knows he had won his second Indy 500, and assumes that because he'd won two, that he gets two bottles of milk and not one. So he grabs both bottles, takes a swig of one, and is like, well, what am I supposed to do with this other one? So in Castroneves' typical spontaneous joy, he dumps it and then swings it around. Well, that then became somewhat of a tradition, notably when 3 years later Dan Weldon won, and Dan Weldon, because it was whole milk, poured it almost perfectly symmetrically on the top of his head,
mm-hmm.
and it almost like an umbrella went back down over his head like a perfect like shower or like waterfall over him, and someone got a photo of it. So that became the tradition of dumping of the milk. Palou, and I asked him about it yesterday when he was on about it. He did two things that I thought were really neat. Number one, he did mention the fact that he knew that he was going to be in that fire suit for like the rest of the day, and so he's like, I didn't want to smell like, soured old milk. But he also said, I knew how much I wanted to share it with my family and my team and everything else, so I didn't want to waste milk by dumping it so that everybody could get some. And in addition to this, which I thought was fabulous, he was one of 3 drivers in the field to request milk for his child. And so they had a children's size bottle for his daughter who also drank milk.
I saw that.
Which was pretty cool. So I thought Palou, and I'm sure it's happened before. I don't know, though, of a driver. I mean, there have been many drivers that have had their children in Victory Circle. Allenser Jr. in 92 comes to mind. Gilles de Ferran had his daughter with him when he won in 2003. That comes to mind. So that's not unprecedented. But for him to have the presence of mind ahead of time that I would like my daughter also to have milk, I thought was super cool. And if that becomes a new tradition, that's cool as well. But I do love everything about it. It's certainly cool. Alex Palou, and I get this. I get that a lot of people around here probably don't know a lot about the guy. He is still relatively new to the scene. But Alex Palou is a very soft-spoken and polite young guy, extremely friendly, not arrogant, not cocky at all. He has almost no ego from everything I can tell, and I've been around him a decent amount from the time that he first got here and was really kind of learning the command of the language to now. But he now lives on the north side of Indianapolis, his wife, his baby. I think the thing about Alex Palou that I can tell people that to me is just kind of a cool story was last year when IndyCar raced in Barber. It was either last year or 2 years ago. He had won the race and dominant fashion. I then drove over to Atlanta and flew home from Atlanta. And Alex Palou was on my flight from Atlanta to Indy. And he and his wife had just had their baby. And Alex Palou had the baby carrier and was carrying the baby carrier with the baby in it. And the bag, like the diaper bag and the bag and everything else. And literally the guy would not let his wife carry anything as they were getting on the plane and everything. No, I got this, that kind of thing. And then on the flight, he was sitting in the aisle directly across from me. And literally the entire flight was the most attentive father to the baby like I'd ever seen. I mean, nonstop. He and his wife both. But, I mean, he was truly a very dear guy. But he lives now in Indy. And he's embraced Indianapolis, and he wore the Halliburton jersey during the parade because he knew how much people care about the Pacers. And then he went out at halftime of the game wearing the jersey and the wreath. People will grow to like Alex Palou. He is not the gregarious personality of Elio. He is not the flamboyancy of a Dan Weldon, but he's a very just humble, down-to-earth, nice dude. And he's from Barcelona, which is like the most beautiful city ever. And if you've never been, you need to go. John's up next. We'll hand it off to him, and we'll get you all set up for Pacers-Knicks Game 4 tonight. Tavern just across from the field house. Perfect opportunity to stop by, have a beverage, Diet Coke perfectly sufficient, and get yourself over to watch some Pacers Knicks tonight, that game at 8 o'clock. I have to admit this. I didn't think I'd admit this, but I have a confession to make. 8 o'clock tonight feels like 2 in the morning.
What?
I mean, what I'm saying is it feels like that is like 5 hours from now is like, man, that's a long time from now. You know? Just a lot going on between now and then, it feels like.
Like what, Jake?
I mean, the clock's not moving quick because it's starting to catch up to me a little bit.
The lack of sleep from the month of May?
Just it's I love everything about it. And, we're really, really, really fortunate to do what we do. And there's no more fun time to do it than right now, for sure. But, for all of us, I mean, this is true of all of us, but I know in my case, it's not physically demanding. It's just not. We're not lifting, we're not laying asphalt. We're not lifting heavy objects. We're not working in an iron, steel mill. I mean, I get it. There are people that work a lot harder than I do. But it is, and it's only, a 3-week stretch for all intent and purposes. But keeping straight the schedule of the events going on, and, if you start your day, and I'm very lucky for this, I'm not complaining about it at all. I mean, I love it. But, like, on certain days where I get up and I'm emceeing 2 different corporate events before the show comes on at noon, and I do the show noon to 3, and then go up and do the practice session on the network from 3 until 6, and then on some of those days, then, on a couple of them, then going to another event to MC during the dinner hour, and then coming in here to either do Trackside Live, or if we had not had one recorded, Beyond the Bricks, and then getting up the next day and doing it. It's not, none of that is difficult, but it is a little bit mentally draining. And, it's so funny, on Friday night, the night of Carb Day, actually, I take that back, Thursday night, the night before Carb Day, I was getting something to eat, and my buddy Quincy Clark, who I grew up near, sees me in the restaurant, comes up and says, so, is this the calm before the storm? And I said, no, this is actually the calm after the storm. The weekend, Carb Day, the parade, and the race, that's the fun part. That's the easy part. The getting in to the track. Now, my understanding is, somebody told me, is this true? I can't remember if somebody texted me this yesterday or if we talked about it on the air. But to get from downtown to gate 2 of the Speedway via 16th Street, all of a sudden, stopped. And we were stopped for 45 minutes. Okay? And that's that's in the escort line, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm like, usually it's 11 minutes from downtown, boom, straight into the Oval. You're in, right? Well, somebody told me that I guess a bus got stuck in one of the tunnels. Is that right?
Yeah. An Indigo bus, yeah.
That would explain why things got backed up a little bit, right?
It was like an accordion.
Unbelievable. No wonder why. But, listen, this is remarkable to me. It is remarkable to me that, and we can all bemoan it, and it's totally a fair point, that every year, last year was really bad, where people are just like, what is taking so long to get out of here and whatever else. But the fact that they are able to get 1/3 people inside a 2.5-mile oval without anybody that we know of, getting hurt or anything else going on within a 4-hour window on either side is remarkable. That truly is remarkable. You're taking, I'm trying to think, roughly 10% of the population of the metro area and sending it all into one area that is, 15 blocks long and 10 blocks wide. And to do that, the way that they have to have that set up, and yes, trust me, I'm like anybody else. When you're stuck in that traffic, you're sitting there going, oh my gosh, especially getting home when you want to get home. It's been a long day. I get it. But then you just think about, there has to be some, I tell people all the time, when you leave the Indy 500, you just have to know that you are going to pull out, and for the first 20 minutes, you are going to be stuck in like this gelatinous blob that is going to move in whatever direction they need you to move. And then once it finally dissipates and you're able to then go on about your way, then it's up to you to circle around and figure out how to get home. They're just trying to get you out of the mess. You know, the people that are pulling out like, yeah, I need to go left here. It's okay, good. Have fun with that, right? Your thoughts on the game tonight, Eddie? The thing that you want to see out of quarter number one, aside from the Pacers in the lead, would be what?
I just want to see them get out in transition early, push the tempo, get back to playing Pacers basketball. I'm fascinated to see the kind of chess piece game the game of chess that's going on between Carlisle and Tom Thibodeau. Does Carlisle elect to go smaller to try to run those two bigs off the floor, so Mitchell Robinson can't kill you on the offensive glass or on the glass in general? Because I don't know if you noticed or not, Jake, but he was laboring up and down the court in the second half.
So was Towns. I'm telling you, Karl Anthony Towns and that knee. I noticed it in the last minute and a half of the game.
Yeah.
In game 3, Karl Anthony Towns was noticeably favoring his knee. And then what does Josh Hart look like? Because he got banged up late, too, with a... he's about 6'7", guy, shorter hair, kind of baldish.
Oh, he injured his knee, too, late in that game.
Did he?
Yeah. There was... It was after a missed shot coming out of the timeout. It was at the very, very end. He goes up for the rebound, comes down, and he immediately grabs his right knee.
I want to see them get out in pace. You are correct, and I'll be curious to see how early we see Toppin. I'm curious to see if at all we see Jarris Walker, and I want to see Miles Turner hit a 3 within the first 4 possessions, or at least shoot one within the first 4 possessions to bring some of those bigs out. Because when Turner gets that going early and he starts popping those shots, that makes Indiana real difficult to guard.
I felt like they never got Siakam established either in game number 3.
Very fair. I think they were... Yeah, I mean, I would love to see them go to Siakam and just have him work around on the block just to get one of those bigs in foul trouble, right? So you get Siakam involved on one end, and the other, you're circling Turner back up top to shoot from the outside and trying to draw those guys out on him, which I think will be key. But listen, I mean, it's going to be what is tonight's T-shirt? Do we know?
I can't remember. JMV was talking about it yesterday.
Was it? It's not.
It's another gold out.
Well, I knew that.
Yes, Sir's Nation. That's what it was. Yes, Sir's Nation.
Okay.
Yes, Sir's Nation.
Have we run out of ideas? Is that what this is? I mean, I'm willing to lend to my trademark for a game if we need be.
I thought Vroom Baby was good.
Vroom Baby's good, yeah. But Yes, Sir's Nation. Yeah.
Yes, sirs. Let's go. I'm all for it. Yeah. Okay. All for it.
Are they recycling back? They've already used Yes, Sirs. So they like. Are they just writing in Nation on the extras of those T-shirts? Is that what they're doing? Is that what they're doing? They had a couple laying around. People get on me because I didn't put on the shirt right away.
I texted you.
I know. Well, everybody and their brother did. Actually, my buddy Mac sent me a text. He sent one to Shannon and I both and said...
Mac Engel from the Fort Worth Star Telegram?
Correct. He said, you guys are getting a lot of TV time. And I said, Mac, you're the only one that noticed me. Nobody else notices me in that equation. Trust me. Everybody and their brother in the state of Colorado, Shannon's home state, sends pictures to her.
I thought Shannon looked lovely the other night.
Thank you. I'll let her know. John's up next. Coach's Tavern. Stop by, have a cold one, listen to Sports Talk Radio. Get set, get ready for game number 4. We'll talk about it tomorrow. Thanks for listening to Query & Company.